It's time to convene the Roy City workshop for this evening here at the Hope Center. Present is Mayor Cragen, Councilmember Hilton, Councilmember Porter, Councilmember Yeoman, Councilmember Dandoy, and Councilmember Beecraft. Also present is Acting City Manager Jason Paulson and the attorney Annie Black.
Mayor, if I can we move the Patterson property to number 1 and then just kind of shuffle everything down?
Yeah.
Okay.
Come on in, folks.
Come on in.
Go ahead and grab another
Just
chair.
grab a chair.
Yeah.
Biggest high school class of the year.
Yeah, I was like, wow.
Want to welcome you all out.
Just do midterms.
They want to welcome you all out this evening. The discussions are to the mayor and city manager's duties and responsibilities. That's the first item on the agenda.
Nope.
Well, okay, we're going to move to Patterson property.
Yep.
Yeah, just,
You just
oh, that's okay. I just see a couple representatives from the Patterson property here, so instead of making them go through the whole meeting, we can just kind of talk about them first, so. So I do have a little bit of information on that. A couple council meetings ago, we had discussed this in depth, and I think the decision was to de-annex out of Hooper, annex into Roy. And then Colby Bond wanted to give his little speech last week because they missed 2 weeks ago, and then kind of said that we don't really need Roy stormwater to hook into, we just need culinary water. We said we would table this to a work session with some more information to follow. That more information is, Mayor Craig, and you spoke with Hooper's mayor at an event. And I don't know if you want to tell the other council members your discussion with them.
Well, we had a discussion. I met with Mayor Green at a function that we was at, and I talked to Mayor Green, and Councilmember Hilton was also present. And we mentioned the Patterson property came up at that discussion. And Hooper is in favor of Roy if we're going to take the property to annex it into Roy City. They would rather it be annexed into Roy City and square that boundary out and have all the dealings with the property in the future through Roy City. So, what did you get out of that?
Just that. He flat out came right out and said, they need to de-annex and annex it Roy. That was pretty much his statement.
Okay, so I talked with Wasatch Civil, our engineers. They've written a letter that their desires would be the same to, if this project going forward, to de-annex out of Hooper and annex into Roy. Also, the engineers for Hooper as well has stated the same, that they would rather this property be annexed into Roy. So with Hooper City's elected officials saying that they would rather de-annex out and have them annexed into Roy, Hooper's engineer firm has said the same thing, and our engineer firm has also echoed the same. And apparently the engineers from Hooper has already reached out to the owners and has already expressed their desires that they would like that to happen. So that's kind of the information at hand. 6,000 is a Roy road. With 6,000 being a Roy road, there was about 6 or 7 residents on the north side of 6,000 South that has gone to the Patterson Group or this building people and said, we're going to sue Well, they can't do that because we've already created it. They're already an island because we have Roy Road to 6,000 and they're already divided. So therefore that eliminates their rule to be able to do that. So talked with the attorneys about that, talked with our engineers. There is no issues there. So
So let me just make sure that I understand. So because of those islands and those citizens there that I'm kind of understanding do not want to annex it, because that's already created an island, we do not need to take that into consideration. So it's basically just the property in general for the subdivision.
yeah,
property
do we
that we're looking at.
de-annex it out of Hooper
Okay.
and annex into Roy? You know, if we're looking at an annexation with all these other people and we are trying to square up the boundaries, does it make sense to go with the engineer's recommendations and both cities' recommendations? So,
It sounds like you did your due diligence and everything, so the proper way to do this would be, Mayor, is to just say, if you want to come in, you got to annex it to the city, just to make it clean all the way around. Is that correct?
I understand.
That's pretty much what we said to begin with.
Right.
So they want to build on it, and they want to come into the city. We will look at, discuss the annexation. I
Well-
would look favorably up on that. Council also to look favorably up on that.
And we wouldn't have to, they'd do the de-annexation with the other city, and then they would do a petition to annex. It wouldn't be the city doing the petition to annex.
The current policy, I believe, reads right now that there's a fund of, a cost to annex into Roy. Is the city willing to set aside that cost? I think it's like $1,500 something, administrative processing fees. Just waive that fee and allow that annex come through without any cost to the homeowner, or excuse me, in this case, it's the landowners?
That'd just have to be a policy decision of the council.
So why, you wouldn't want to waive that, but it's policy, it's required, it's administrative costs, it's engineers' fees, all the stuff that
Are
have
you
to be
thinking
paid.
for convenience purposes?
Yeah,
Because
because-
of what we're thinking?
Well, and that because we're not going to do it with the islands. We pretty well talked the last time that the islands come in as part of the Weaver County annexation. We were not going to charge the residents on that annexation effort. And you've got an argument that says, well, if you're not going to do it to all the islands in Roy, why would you do it to the Patterson property?
and I think the key part of that question is,
They were never county to begin with, they're over cities, it's a whole different issue.
or the impact fees. You know, the impact fees are a lot different than what you're talking about. You know, so I mean, that's, I guess, up to you guys. The impact fees, I think, are going to impact us greatly, but just the mere fact of licensing them over to Roy, I see what you're saying on waiving that fee.
There just is a provision within the current ordinance that basically says if a landowner wants to petition to
Right.
annex into the city then can charge
Right.
them a administrative processing fee.
And we talked about waiving that for the other people.
And we did.
Right.
So my comment then would be is that maybe what you need to do is when you bring it to the council in a formal council meeting for a vote, you could also augment that vote to also include, do we allow the property owner to pay that annexation fee or not? And my only reason why I brought that to the point is because we specifically stated that we weren't going to do that for all of the other annexations in
True.
Weaver County coming in.
True.
And I don't know the difference, if there isn't even a difference, but just recognize that that may be a conversation.
Yep, and we can look at that and bring that, when you guys are ready for that, bring it to the
I
table.
think your point where these parcels were already in the city limits, this property we're talking about is the city, so why are we going to charge that? So I can actually see both
Both
sides
sides.
of it.
Yeah.
So I think it just depends on if we feel like it's more of a convenience to the property owners to go ahead and treat them that way, just like we have the other properties, or if not, because they were actually a cover and they were not considered
Part of this
an
process.
island.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yep.
So I
Yep.
can see both sides.
We can bring both sides and have you guys just be the designing.
Yeah,
Yep.
Okay.
just to provide some fairness.
Yep, that's no
Okay.
problem.
Another annexation, that was going to occur, could have occurred 35 years ago into the annexation.
Yeah.
And at that time, the state law changed, and that area was not brought in at that time. And this is a new issue with the property wanting to come into the city. And so I think we look at the annexation.
Good point.
fees. I would say, look at those annexation fees, come
Yep,
back with.
and we'll bring you 2 proposals for it, so you guys can make the vote. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, number 1, mayor and city manager duties and responsibilities.
Mayor, if I can, sorry, can I make another change? Travis, if we could have Travis hit the ramp in Roy.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
And we can get him out too.
Yeah,
so.
I didn't know I was gonna be here, so I did try to commit to my wife something, but I'll be here as long as we need to get this resolved.
Well, let's get on with your project.
Okay.
Ramp project.
All right, let's talk ramp a little bit. Today and next Monday, there is ramp meeting that a representative from the city must attend. I always attend them, that's not a big deal. They've made some changes in ramp that I can't even tell you about. But what I wanted this meeting and conversation to be as much as anything was ideas and suggestions that any of you may have about potential ramp grants. You know, obviously, we've got a lot of potential exciting things happening right now. We're building a park, you know, and there's tons of park amenities that we could put, you know, ramp money toward. Ball fields, parking structures, restrooms, potentially a pickleball court, you know, playground potential amenities. One of the big questions I have is historically ramp hasn't allowed you to request money for events that charge, AKA complex, aquatic center, things like that. I have heard that that is one of the changes, that we will be allowed to, example, ask for money at the complex and or aquatic center or places that admission is being charged. I don't, you know, I think it's just my end of things, a discussion and dialogue of what you guys would like to see us, you know, potentially put in and request monies for.
Okay, let me just ask a couple questions, if you can, Travis. We got a ramp grant approved for the ice rink.
Yes, sir.
Was it the city's intent under, and I didn't read that in the policy, I read the ramp policy, but did that, were we anticipating then to put the ice rink in as a no charge?
When you build them, there's kind of there's frankly speaking kind of the caveat of it. You can use the money to build it and then turn around and charge. Okay, but you cannot, prior to, from what I've been told this year, you haven't been able to use it at established facilities that charge admission. They don't want to give this money and then have you turn around and charge people for it.
Okay, because taxpayers already paid for that.
There you go.
Okay, makes sense. Okay.
If I can, on that ice rink, I'm not sure where we're at with the ice rink.
The ramp was approved. We asked the city, we talked as a council, and the discussion with the council was not to fund it last year in large part because the property tax increase law said that you have to definitize exactly how the money will be spent. And it was not one of the items on that list that was presented to the public. But Dave brought up a good point. He said, well, that's kind of last year. That's when that tax. It's not this year. And so you look at that, technically, this is new money, new issues. In my opinion, I think the city ought to present to the council the approval to put that back into the discussion and talk about that, because as far as I'm concerned, it's a new set of rules for a new year, so.
Right, and I think we're all pretty much in agreement, so let's use reserve fund money to fund that. Travis has talked with the engineer to get costs, I think they're about the same.
Yeah, the costs have not went up from last year to this year, you know, in their conversations. I can have something as early as next city council meeting, a week from today on
So
there.
put that on the agenda, earmark it, we can put that money, take it out, put it in Park Development Fund, and leave it there for the spring to get it built.
So my question is, with the ramp, do we still have that money?
Yes, yes, you have 5 years to spend it.
Money.
We actually have a couple other ones that are gonna be spent up here in the near future at North Park as well,
Okay,
so.
The only discussion I think was still left, and it was a good argument about that would be, is where to put it. You know, we talked about north of the municipal building, in large part because you have a piece of property there. But the argument was, or the discussion was, it's going to put a lot of cramped parking in that area, particularly during the winter. You couldn't ask for a better setting because you've got all the lights
Sure,
there, and
sure.
what better to have it than there, but it's going to create a parking issue in terms of people where to park to attend that.
so with that, the parking, we've got a way to add parking to our existing parking lot. So the fire station, directly north and west, there's that piece of grass right there that you go in and out. We could move that back and have parking there. And then on the east, or no, on the south side of the fire station, there's also ways to put more parking in there.
Right.
So,
I want to bring this up, we try to make, I mean, somebody said parking is a big deal, but I'm going to throw this out. We have a great working relationship with the school district.
Yep.
And the local church right there. You take the school district, the elementary school, and the church house and steakhouse, there is plenty enough parking
right.
for people to access that.
And I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I think that's a good spot. Also, the good thing about that spot is, so when we pour the concrete down, the water lines will go underneath the concrete, which we can freeze that for the winter time. We have a nice piece of pad of concrete that if we set up basketball standards or even a pickleball court, we can actually take that out.
I'll step in right now. In our ramp request last year, we flat said we would put in basketball standards and pickleball courts. So, I mean, it doesn't change any of the cost, you know, the cost is still the same. You're gonna use post-tension concrete to do so, but it was our vision when we requested it, to have that facility, frankly speaking, being a great recreation asset for 10 months of the year. You know, I mean, to where in the wintertime you can ice, you can skate, and, you know, we'll decide about hockey leagues and other things like that, maybe not leagues, but open play. And then you segue to the spring and summertime, it would be, you know, still recreational use with other amenities such as pickleball and basketball. Yes, sir.
But here's the question, Travis. We're locating it in a what? That's a retention pond.
Yeah, and
Water.
And that was my first concern, and that's where I went to the engineers and said, is this doable with, can we put this in, can we construct the air, because there's no point in asking for ramp money if it's a no-go. They assured me there would not be a problem.
So are we doing drainage? Aren't they also going to be able to, when we're burying the lines, the water lines and stuff?
Yes.
Fixing the drainage and everything, so I could see where we wouldn't have that problem.
Yeah, I agree, but I just want to make sure the original purpose of that retention pond is for
Absolutely.
what?
It's a retention pond, you said it.
Yeah, and so the intent then would be is we just don't want any water to get in there and fill that up. And so, are we
From my end, I'm not sure on the engineering. I don't want to speak about something I'm not an expert. I can simply tell you this. Wasatch Civil had zero concern about that being an issue.
I think as long as we can maybe see the engineer reports.
Fair
just
enough.
to make sure
No, I
that,
think that's more than
you
fair.
know, we get his okay, then, yeah.
Jason, just get all that, bring it
Yep.
to the next council meeting.
Another thing, Jason, check with Irma, our insurance people, on the insurance liabilities on Apple. Okay?
Yep, you got it.
Thank you,
Okay,
sir.
so Travis, back to the original, hey, let's put out for some ramp money. Historically, the ramp, once you get a big project like we just got approved for, they don't do that for that particular area for a few years, but we still get medium-sized approval.
And here's the truth, You never know. I always want to operate under the assumption of let's ask for it, and if we don't get anything, we don't get anything. But you're right, we've got some money allocated out there that we need to spend. And a lot of times when you get a big chunk one year, they don't say this, there's nothing in the policy about it, it's just something that I perceived. It's not that you do great the following year.
Something they look at to see if we have not spent it yet?
Oh, yeah, every November the end of November, I have to fill out a progress and completion report on every ramp project. We also get from ramp on a yearly basis, it's a great program, near 37,000 and change. I'm sorry, I can get you the exact number if you want. It's 37,000 and change, which they call per capita ramp money. And this per capita ramp money just says, Roy City, you have this many residents, we're going to give you $1 for each one of them. And, you know, we use that for several projects throughout the course of a year. So ramp's been a great addition, not just for Roy City, but for a lot of communities. I mean, we got $1 million for this facility. We got the trail, we got, you know, $300,000-$400,000 to put in the walking trail and different amenities that you'll be seeing added to North Park. One of the bathrooms paid for, some lights on ball fields. Ram's been a good friend to us, and we've really enjoyed the partnership. That being said, like Councilman Tafoya said, quite often, when you do real well one year, you don't do as good next year's. But if we can present a great case and a great grant, who knows? And that's I'm going to ask for them every year because it's I don't want to say free monies, but it's a grant, and it gives us a chance to do some neat and exciting stuff.
I don't really know exactly what we do have fully funded in North Park, George Walnut Park, but if there's something there that we can put in to help make that even better than what we have, that'd be great. Any equipment that you need with that. And the same thing with Russell, the pickleball turned out pretty dang good.
Yeah.
And in order to be progressive with that in recreation, we need more courts.
I'm hoping by the end of this week, and maybe this is something I can give you guys an update on next Tuesday as well, that I'll have my, Wasatch Civil will have my engineer estimates complete for the adding on of the existing park at North Park to the new plan. I don't have the exact cost. I showed pictures that night and things, and they're getting me the exact cost of all of that right now. I could give you guys an update on that Tuesday night as well and let you know, here's what we got, here's what our plan says that we want, and where those costs line up with one another.
Can I offer a couple of thoughts?
Please.
Two things. Potential ramp project. In my conversation with Kathy here, at this particular facility, she says, this particular place right out here is absolutely underutilized, in large part because it's so hot out there that people don't go out there. She asked the question would the city be willing to consider a ramp just to put a cover on this so people will spend more time out there? And she believes that they can actually rent that space for weddings and other kinds of things if it was covered. And it's not being enclosed, just something to, something to shut a little bit of that down in terms of the heat. And so would you consider that maybe an option?
Sure.
And part two, if I can, I hate doing this. The statute specifically states in the policy that says that, well, let me tell you how the ramp is going to go. The city is going to file a ramp for ramp approval, but that's conditioned on two things according to the ramp policy. One is that one of you three will sign a letter of intent to pick up the additional dollars it's going to take if they fund a portion of that. And second is that one of you will also commit to the property that the property will be available. That's what it says. So if they're going to build it in, like the skate rink, in that location, Roy City then has to commit that they own the property or access the property, or the purchase that you get in the ramp funds will purchase that property. But that is a commitment on the part of the city that says you're doing that. That's as you're submitting the application. Here's the problem there. The only authority to to sign a letter of intent to obligate city funds is the city council. So here's a solution, just an opportunity, and I'm not trying to change it, I'm just trying to get compliant to the policy. And this is not our policy, it's the Weaver County's ramp policy I'm speaking of. Would you be willing then to present to the council prior to submittal and let us give you a tentative agreement, which means, in essence, the mayor can sign the letter of intent, or you sign the letter of intent as the city manager. And that will obligate then, the city is committed to do that legally.
Yeah, I think that's, yeah.
Okay, so this
It's a
is where
requirement
I
on their
was
grant.
referencing,
Right.
because I just thought that in one of our previous conversations that we had, that, and you did bring it up, was that ramps have never really been brought to us and, you know, you put them in and submitted them and stuff. So, and then I thought that's the way, so now,
So I think what Bob's saying, by rule, it needs to have authority.
our kind of acknowledgement.
It should be part of our application.
If you guys still sign on.
Yeah,
So
after we
that's
present
where-
it to you guys.
Then I guess that's where the
Here's the
confusion
problem.
comes.
I think we're making this harder than it needs to be.
Okay.
All we need to do in policy is give you guys authority, the department director, to
Well, that's not
put
what
that
we
in.
do.
Simple as that. Because there are times when Travis or some, even the fire department, police department finds out, oh, I found this ramp grant, I have a week to put it in. We don't have a council meeting for 2 weeks. And for us to stop, say, oh, sorry, can't do it because it's 2 weeks away, it's just not common sense. We believe in the department heads, and that's what it should be.
I don't disagree, but here's what happened with the skating rink. You presented it, we already got the approval. $200,000 was coming, we had to cough up $300,000.
500 was coming.
It was a $500,000.
So the cost of it was 510,000 and we were getting 300, so we're gonna have to come up with
Okay,
200.
so it's whatever, okay,
Yeah.
so they're gonna give us 300, we cost us 200,000. A letter of intent was signed from the city to Weaver County saying is we will do that. Had the council at that moment said, we will not do that. Now remember, it hadn't been approved, but the letter of intent had already been signed. Here was the problem. The problem was, if we went back to Weaver County and said, oh, by the way, we don't want it, after they approved a $300,000 grant to the city, we talked about what would be the reciprocal impact in any future grants if we turned that money away, after we had already signed a letter of intent. The problem was, we didn't know there was a skating rink being proposed by the city.
Maybe a communication
Well,
error.
that's all I'm saying.
No, and I'll weather that. I'll, that's 100% on me. I have,
I mean, we talked.
since
about
I've been here,
We talked about it being as simple as you guys send an email, hey, I'm applying for this grant.
Maybe that's the
That's
communication
and
part.
I,
Possible
I'm okay with
grant.
that.
Yeah.
and I agree with you guys. I need to do a better job, and that's why I appreciate this opportunity tonight to say, hey, what do we want to see? What do we want to do? Because since I've had this position, I've requested ramp money, and like I stated earlier, we've been pretty successful, and it's historically been hand in hand with my boss, you know, being the city manager at that time. He and I, and having conversations, what do you like to see? And I have no problem from this point forward saying the council's got to be included in that. I mean, they have to know, you know, they're the ones who allocate the money, and they, if we're going to ask for money to put in an ice skating rink, then it only makes sense to say they need to be supportive of this, and I'm 100% okay with doing all of that.
Yeah, and it's not a pink
Well, then that's all.
We'll communicate better. Yeah, we'll communicate
What
better.
the direction has been on the past is council, they have brought ramp grant money to the council, or projects to the council. The council has endorsed the applications for the ramp grant. And then we have worked very, very diligently with the ramp committees in Weaver County. So we've been very, very successful in obtaining ramp money for Roy City.
Yes.
And so, you know,
But my
it's-
point, Mayor, was only this.
Just,
No one in the city has the authority, okay? Only the city council by law has the authority to take $200,000 out of the reserve fund and approve that into a new budget line. And that's just what the law, change the law and
So-
give him or her, that's
Well,
fine.
yeah.
That's what the law
Council
says.
delegate though, if they,
Yes.
Jason emails us and says this is what's happening.
Oh, yeah.
and we and 5 of us say move forward on it.
I think 100% of it is communication. Hey, Mayor, Council, this is what we got on table. What do you think about this? Boom, we have to have it in. Go ahead, then it's done. You guys know about it?
It's not that big of a deal.
And I'll make sure from here on out, you guys are aware, and I don't even have a problem. For major grants, historically, and I don't know this yet, it's right around, I was just looking at my phone, it's usually the second Friday in January that they're due. Last year, I believe it was on the 17th. This year, it wouldn't shock me without knowing for sure, it's going to be January 12th. And I have no problem on January 2nd coming in, that would be a city council night, I'm assuming, and say, here's kind of the direction we're going. I'd like to do more than that, frankly speaking, and when we narrow it down to 3 or 4 different ideas, I have no problem dropping you guys an email or having Jason drop you guys an email saying, here's 3 or 4 ideas. We can put in for 1 of them or 4 of them. They just typically will tell us, prioritize them. You know, if you can only do 1 of these 4 projects, tell us which one is your most important project. So I have no problem doing that and making you guys an more active participant in the process.
Just keeps it legal.
Sure, no,
And just keeps us simple.
Now, back to the original discussion. Any other projects you guys want to try to apply for ramp grant for?
I think we should look at the complex, definitely.
That's what I was going to bring up, Travis. So just for clarification, for the skate rink, you received 1 grant or 2?
1 grant.
And that included the basketball courts?
We submitted the project as one grant, okay, and you know, sold it under the idea and premise of, you know, it's an ice skating rink, you know, in theory, November, December, January, February. And then from that point on, you know, because it is this post-tension concrete, you know, and why waste post-tension concrete, we can put up basketball courts on one end and pickleball courts on the other. And there you go. And we just sleeve everything in the ground and remove it, and then, you know, put some sort of cap on it when we flooded the area and flooded the cement up. And then once we drained it, we'd put everything back in place.
I think it's a cool...
Along the lines of what Marge was saying, I think what you're saying with the ramp money is that they may be changing the rules and be able to maybe do this. I think this is a great thing for us because in this process, I contacted the Weaver School District. I actually talked to John Ritchie, being on the school board. And I point blank asked him, are you going to get rid of junior high football? Because that plays a big part into what we wanted to do with Roy Junior High. Maybe tagging on and maybe putting a new complex over in that area rather than where it's at. He flat out said, we are not getting rid of football. So, when they rebuild Roy Junior High, don't expect to get a nice aquatic center like North Davis Junior High over in Davis County. It's not going to happen. So if we want to provide that service for the community, ramp grants may come into big play in some of the things that we do over there. So that's a council decision too, something to think about in the future.
Travis, I don't know if it's valid or not, but I heard a rumor that they were going to say, hey, you guys want the old gym at Roy Junior?
You know, I've had several conversations with Matt Williams. He's the principal at Roy Junior. I've talked with John Ritchie. I've talked with Jeff Stevenson, the superintendent. They want to. They're interested in partnering up on some stuff, and whether that is the old gym, you know, that we work out an agreement there, the old basketball court, whether that is adding on bigger basketball courts similar to what South Ogden did at the South Ogden Junior High, where they put in multiple basketball courts there, and South Ogden helped foot the bill for some of that, to anything from potentially if there was going to be a new complex. I've had conversations regarding all of those with those 3 gentlemen. They're all in the infancy stages of these conversations. I know this. I think we're all very motivated to figure out a way to do something to benefit this community, you know, from a school perspective as well as a city perspective. me and Matt are looking to get together to run through some ideas later this week, on Friday of this week, that we would look to bring back to you as well as his bosses at the school district. All these things we talked about, how to accomplish them, that would be the next step. But
So
It's
in
kind of a
ref-
moot point until the bond passes.
No, that's
If the
true.
bond doesn't pass, then nothing, the
And-
discussion's kind of closed.
and Jeff Stevenson is very
Stevens.
Steven, sorry, we're no longer friends. Jeff he's pretty honest about throwing that out all the time, of the bond's got to pass, and but Royce City is, frankly speaking, we're kind of the apple of the eye of the school district because of our ability to work with the schools. And I take great pride in that from my end. I love working with the people that I've worked with at the high school. We're one town, and it's important to me that we continue working together on a lot of projects. And the school district sees that. Frankly speaking, they see it, and I think they're a very willing partner if we can make some things work out.
I think that's a strong request when you have two public entities working together to something take to ramp. I think that's a strong something.
There's no doubt.
Right.
RAMP really cares, and it's important to them that a lot of people can use stuff. A lot of people in the county, not just Roy residents, but Hooper and West Haven and Riverdale, people in Weber County. It's a Weber County grant, and they love things that everybody can use. Whether you live in Roy or you live in West Haven or any of those other cities in Weber County, they love that. The RAMP committee goes through. In the summer months, they use our they use our complex every Saturday. We've set up arrangements for them on Saturdays where they pay us a minimal fee and we let people come in. We give them the aquatic center once a year. We go to great lengths to ensure a good relationship with Weber County.
I think like Brad said, it's kind of iffy, but during that, after November, December, you can get with them, see if you can come up with something.
Yeah, and I think and it segues into our next conversation a little bit. I think those are important things to identify in real estate and land, and is there things we can partner up with to better serve, from a leisure service perspective, all the members of the community. I think it's very important we work with them.
So let's see if I think we're going to summarize this ramp discussion. Councilman Hilton said, how can ramp funds be used in the complex? Or Councilman Beecraft said that. And we said, we really can't say at this moment until we find out what the bond is passed.
Well,
November 7th.
I think they're kind of two separate things, and I'll explain why. I think Brad, and I don't want to speak for him, but I think Brad was talking more about the ability of, much like you've seen them done in Clearfield, where a municipality and the school district work together to build a giant facility with a school on one side and a community center, aquatic center on the other. And am I right, Brad, when I say that? Now, I think there's the other side, which you say is this. Okay, if ramp funds are available for the complex, could we request $40,000 and redo a pool deck at the current facility? Could we request $60,000 to put in new racquetball courts at the current facility? So I don't think that they necessarily have to be together on that. I think we can look at them as two separate issues.
So you're telling us then, you're going to look and see if there's something to do with ramp funds to do with the complex.
I would like to. I would like to, but remember, this is an open dialogue between us to say, where do we want to look to request for ramp funds? And I like, there are things I can clearly put in at North Park. Without batting an eye, I know I can use funds at North Park.
Well, you talked about maybe putting 6 pickleball courts in North Park.
Absolutely, we did talk about that.
Okay, so let me offer a thought then. You're going to come back with some ideas then, I assume.
Yep.
And then from those ideas, you'll present them to us and we'll discuss them and vote.
I have no problem with that.
Perfect. Travis, I just thought, go ahead, Carter.
Oh, I was just gonna say, okay, so we didn't really discuss the complex.
Not
So-
yet.
No, we haven't got there. I think we're gonna get there, but I don't think we're there yet.
Okay, then I'll hold off. Okay, go ahead, Dave.
I say we still always need to shoot big, even though we know we won't get big projects every
Right.
year, we still keep them on there and put it for the next year. My thought is at the aquatic center, you always have to build on what we got, because it comes the same old, so we need to add something more there, be it a wave, surf wave thing, or a lazy river, whatever it may be. But we need to build on what we have, because otherwise it just dies.
I've talked with my staff and we're looking into potential another slide, potential a lazy river, and I'm trying to get some costs on both of them to see if that's something, you know, is a possibility for ramp grants or even
Right.
just
I mean,
future
this is
budgeted
big.
items.
We know
here.
it might not be approved this year, but 1 year, 2 years down the road.
But I gave you some of that information
Yeah,
when we came back from that. And that information talked about the waves and it
Yep.
talked about a variety of things.
Yep.
And then you did some homework and you said, because I pointed out where they're located in Utah. And the conversation that I think you had and was validated by the developer said that where they were put in some places in the state of Utah, attendance soared. And they were making a lot of money off this kind of entertainment. And you definitely have the space down there. Roy City owns a big piece of property down in the aquatic center. So I think if I hear what Dave is talking about, maybe we go big, we put it out there, maybe it doesn't get funded this year, but maybe it could be funded next year. And it's $1 million budget. These are big dollar items.
yeah.
But the return on investment has been significant in those cities where they've done it in Utah. And if that's the case, I think you got an argument there that says let's go big and maybe we'll get it.
I will bring you guys in the next little bit, next 2 or 3 city council meetings, a list of ideas for ramp, and we can talk about them and let you
You've got
guys.
some ideas too that you could.
Sure, no, I mean, there's things we've talked about, all of the above, you know, at the aquatic center, at the complex, at North Park, you know, at different locations, we've talked about, you know, 2 or 3 different things almost everywhere. So I got my marching orders on that.
And then real quick too, my marching orders for the ramp for the ice skating rink, you want me to put this on next council's agenda to go ahead and take the $200,000 out of the fund balance to finalize the ice skating rink that we've already got
Park
$300,000.
Development Fund, earmarked for that.
Okay, done. Now, going into the complex issue, I wanted to tell you this, and kudos to Travis, is Travis and I have already talked about this before this session, about some of the ideas Travis has and what he would like to do about reallocating money for a sign. He's already met with the group to do a feasibility study for the complex and the complex alone to give us some ideas. So with that and leading into that, I'll kind of let Travis finish that up.
We, in our budget process, you know, there's times that things don't quite get to you, but we ask for money in the budget process to do a feasibility study at the complex. I don't think it ever got to your eyes. I think it got cut out before it ever got there. I've been working with a group called Arch Nexus, and Arch Nexus does feasibility studies. They also do remodels. They also do bonds and builds. And to be honest with you, they've been doing a lot of stuff pro bono on this, you know, because we haven't had budgeted monies to pay them. I think there's a lot of great conversations that can take place at the complex regarding the complex. I think there's conversations, you know, of do we remodel her with massive money? Do we look to purchase lands around it if that's possible? Do we go back to the school district and try to figure out something with parking and or using some of the lands they have surrounding it to make it bigger? I think there's, you know, options of doing it, throwing money at it, putting money into it every year and try try to improve amenities and features for people. Then there's also the option that Councilman Hilton brought up of, do we want to look to bond and build something? And here's the truth, and if this makes me bad at my job, I apologize now. I'm not an expert on all this stuff. I don't know, I don't know, I have an idea if we built a facility twice as big, what it would cost. I'm not sure they know how, they would be able to tell us if we were to do that, or if we were to stay at our current place, what kind of things we need to have. You know, do we need to have, we currently have a multi-purpose pool. You know, it's got wings, and it's got 3-foot areas, and it's got the diving board and 12-foot areas, and it's a 50-meter pool. Most people will tell you if you want to do well in aquatics, you have to have leisure pools, zero-depth pools, pools that increase, much like we have at the aquatic center, with jungle gyms and features like that. But we have one body of water, you know, and unless we got more land, we're still going to have one body of water. You know, there's things from an aesthetic perspective at the current complex that need to be improved. I feel like we've done a pretty good job on some stuff, from, you know, the basketball courts, the weight rooms. We've repainted a lot of stuff, and it's helped. There's no doubt it's helped. But newer facilities have a lot of natural light and things like that. I've tried bringing in contractors to take a look and say, hey, if we were to, you know, put giant windows up in these areas, is that doable? And, you know, where there's a will, there's a way. And in some areas, it's more doable than others because of weight-bearing spots and things like that. Not a lot of them want to work with you until you have done that feasibility study, and you can say, hey, this is the direction that, because a feasibility study to me, and talking with Holly Adams from Arch Nexus, what I would recommend is if we did this, that we would have something like this. Maybe it's a half an hour before a city council meeting or a half an hour after, and we give them the parameters we're looking for. You know, we want this feasibility study to be done on 3 parts. Part 1 would be what kind of what are we looking for costs to include amenities? You know, to meet national recreation standards, how big do we need to get, or what do we need to do to this place to get there? You know, from an aesthetic perspective to actual amenities perspective. You know, do we add there was some people that came and talked a few years ago about adding, they called it physical therapy water, you know, where a body of water for people to do physical therapy that would be heated at a warmer temperature. Is that the route we go? Do we remodel the front office area to add more dance is the wrong choice of word, aerobic areas there? There's not a lot of wasted space at the complex, but there is some. You know, there is some. And to me, I would like experts to be experts and say, if you're going to invest this kind of money into the facility, you know, you're going to buy houses to the east of it, or you're going to work with the school district to do something with a parking structure, or you're going to add to the complex, and the school district's just going to give it to you, but you're going to invest multiple millions of dollars to add these areas. I would like to know, A, what the cost of that's going to be, and what the right things we should add. So I guess what I'm saying is I would like to take that money and hire Arch Nexus to do feasibility studies at the complex.
Okay.
We're going to start.
So what do you want? What do you want from us?
We're good, we're gonna do it.
Good.
Yeah, he's got money in his budget, we're not changing anything, so.
I think, Brad, in what I would like to do, and I'll do some pre-work on this, and then maybe talk with you guys next week at City Council. Sounds like I'm gonna have a big City Council next week. And let you know what that money will get us. You know, whether that gets us the exploration of potential a new one and locations for it, whether it gets us, you know, hey, this is what we're going to talk about with the old one, and show you what we could do with a new one. And I think we can talk about that a little bit, and we give them their marching orders. you know?
But let me, I like what you're saying, but can I offer just one suggestion?
Sure.
Travis, I wouldn't know a good swimming pool if it hit me in the street, but you do, okay? I don't know what a good gym looks like, but you do. You know exactly what you want to do with that gym, that basketball court in there, and you did it. And by the way, I watch your numbers. We're losing money in there, attendance, no question about it. The reports we're reading shows that. We're spending $900,000 a year to sustain it. We're gaining $300,000 of revenue. To give you a perspective, Clearfield is making $1.7 million revenue a year. But here's what happened shortly after you put that gym in, okay? Attendance went up. You started making some money and you made a simple modification to the facility. I didn't ask you what to do. I didn't know what to do.
Sure.
But you do. So here's what I would ask, and it's just my opinion, let everybody else speak. I don't know to tell you whether this is a good idea or not idea, but I think you and your contractor could sit down collectively from your knowledge and what you understand about that, and you can build a feasibility study that's going to be right. And whether you got option one, option two, not much different than what you proposed when you presented what that playground's going to be. And simply says, here's 3 options. Which one do you like? You didn't ask me. I didn't know anyway. But I'll tell you what, I like what you came up with. And if you and your contractor come up with a couple of options that's workable, then let's ask the hard question. Is it easier or better to build new, which is what Hilton's talking about, because it's cost effective? Remember, that's a 43-year-old building, so there's a real issue there. Or can we save some money and renovate that and make it aesthetically as pleasing so that people come back? And if we can choose that, and based on costs and based on your proposals, then to me, I'm going to vote, I'll support whatever you decide. But if you ask me whether or not it should have a better gym or a better floor or better lights, or I can only tell you one thing, Travis. I've been in that facility. The areas you recently have modified and changed are incredible. But when I walk into that men's locker room and I see 15 shades of green and blue and whatever thing, and those lockers are 1940 vintage,
They're pretty bad.
I'm saying to you is, aesthetically, it needs some improvement.
Absolutely.
Bring a plan. Let us see your vision. You know what we need, and I'll bet you nickels to donuts this group right here will support you. But you don't ask me as a council to tell you what I think you need to put in there, because I don't have a clue. Unless you want to basically put some woodworking shops in there, or you want to talk about some of my hobbies, I could not offer any value to that conversation. But you do know, and you did it, and it made a difference. So I say, bring your imagination to the table. Let's talk about your imagination. And if we like it, my heaven, if there's money in the piggy bank, let's do it. And if you can tie ramp funds to play with that as well, then I say let's bring them in too. But I want it to be your plan, your vision, and you tell us what you want, and my heavens, we'll support you. But let me close with this comment. It cannot stay as it is. It's dying, okay? And I'm going to say this once. The bottom line would be almost $1 million a year fund that facility. I think we owe it to the taxpayers and we owe it to the residents of Roy to give them the best possible complex that we can. And we can do that, and I think you have the idea and the vision to do that. Just tell us what you want to do and we'll make it happen. Fair enough?
Fair enough.
Yep.
Okay.
Going along with that, for years and years, the complex has been funded at the level it's been funded since it was built.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate that, it sits on school ground property, so we're gonna have to work with the school district
That's right.
hand in hand of what we would like to do with that complex. And for years, there's been a push by other folks previously sat on this council to improve that complex. But the site that was given at that time was not, we might say. And so if we're gonna give you marching orders to go out there, and how are we gonna make this complex, whether it's retained there and working with the school district and perhaps some expansion on that complex to make it feasible to do it. I'm not sure that if we try to float another bond issue in today's market, folks, to go out and build a new complex, that we will ever get the permission from the public to go out and spend the money to build a brand new complex.
That's right. That's right.
So,
I agree.
if you go out and come back with a good feasibility study, get some people that's in the business to help you, let us know what we have to do working with the school district, and I will certainly talk to Mr. Stevens and Mr. Ritchie and those people, as will the rest of the council, I'm sure, to upgrade that facility, to make it something that Roy City is not going to be losing money on, we're going to be making some money on. As well as the school district will be proud to have it over there for the students at that school to use also.
Has great potential. And I made a comment to you, Travis, even if that means we don't take, but we offer, we buy some land around there or some property in there and establish more parking. 3 complaints. Aesthetics is a problem. People need to feel good about going in.
That's easy to fix.
Second, they need parking, okay? And I was absolutely amazed when I talked to the general public. A lot of people didn't even know it was there.
Sorry.
And your sign put on the front is perfect. Then you can point to it. It is a Roy facility. It's not a Roy City, not Roy High School facility. But they need to know it's there so they can support you. And we can do a lot to help that. Okay, so.
Just for me, I always find the parking thing an oxymoron. You go into the complex to exercise, or better exercise yourself than you can pay to have the parking stalls down.
I know.
But it's-
Well, it's hard. I mean, Travis was telling me on one of the ramp day, no, it wasn't a ramp day, our, oh my gosh, St. Patrick's Day,
Gold dig.
Yeah,
We-
Gold Dig. It happened alongside Roy High was having a something
Dance.
there,
Yeah.
dance or something. And those two, there was no parking at all for anybody.
No,
So,
one of the challenges is Roy High's growing, you know, it's growing, and every year, I was on a roof last Thursday with Rusty Tubbs, and not scientific in any way, shape, or form, but we were looking out through the range and all out there, and it was about probably 8:30 in the morning, and we could see 3 parking spots available. And yeah, there's no doubt that's a challenge, you know, and it's a bigger challenge in the winter months.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, right now, people don't mind walking when it's 68 degrees, but they're not as hip to it when it's not. We do really well with a program called Silver Sneakers, and it's an exercise fitness program for senior citizens. And the biggest complaint we get from them all the time is parking. You know,
And Travis, Marge just drew out, she says, we got green space to the north of there. He says, why don't we do a handshake with the county and talk about putting more parking out there? If I'm correct, 500 people, new students came to Roy High this year. And
I don't know the exact figure, I know they're bigger.
so they're bigger. And I don't think they've made any more space. The only complaint I got was people says, I'm not going to Roy High's football games anymore because I can't find a parking spot. And my family lives across the street, and they see neighbors out there. You could park in their driveway, but you pay $5 to park there. We've got to change.
Capitalism.
Well, they're capitalizing on the opportunity. You want to go see the game? Here's a place to park in my driveway, cost you $5. All I'm saying to you is that this is a school issue and a city issue. Let's team up, let's find a solution. And Marge's point's well taken. Maybe we can partnership in more space, parking space that benefits the school as well as benefits the Roy patrons in terms of finding a place to do that. And I think we can work this, but this is a partnership between the school and the city. And I think you can come up with a vision to help us make that work. And politically, the mayor just said, he's willing to engage with the appropriate people and represent the city to do that. So I say, take out all the stops, tell us what you need, put us to task to help you get your vision happen, okay?
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir.
Take a break.
Well, that's what I was just
Yeah.
wondering if they need, you guys, you can stay as long as you want, but you guys don't need to stay now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Would you like us to sign?
Here they all come. I'm gonna go get some more food. Dude, I hate cold names. Hey, Jeff, good job, bro.
Yeah, come on up.
No, hey,
You can get them all if you want.
It's a work session. What do you guys want? You gave them information, let them do their thing.
There you go, yeah?
Yeah, never.
Thank you.
I don't know. I need to double check your number. I don't think it is Okay,
I'll get with, I'll look tomorrow and I'll come see you.
Okay.
I have meetings all morning.
Okay.
For different stuff, sometimes right after like one, right after lunch, okay?
Okay.
So I'll,
Yeah,
give me
that
till then
sounds
and I'll
good.
come in and see you.
Okay.
Get triple credit.
Hey, Bob. Yes, sir. On this Patterson property, that Patterson property.
That'd be cool. That's what I said.
Thank you for going there.
Of course.
You know,
You just go to the next column.
Hey, you guys got the soft seats. You know, our engineers,
Well,
they're better press.
We loaded her
Thank you
up.
so much.
That we just.
I don't blame you.
Yeah.
I try to be one of the engineers that they want to.
Bits in there.
I just have extra batteries.
The ramp argument that you were.
Okay, so at some point, are we gonna try and bring in those six, or let them sit for a while?
Well, I think with everything else.
I knew it was gonna be a short one, so I didn't feel too bad.
If
It was also really cool when it said when it's like they could reduce like this, just the solution, they can just put the stuff back in.
you were our only victim.
I think that's.
Actually, the guy that's building a car wash over there showed up right after you left.
Just
Oh,
because
is that right?
my
Change the
parents-
zone.
Right.
Make it work for
You know,
you.
I'm curious what it's gonna do for the noise.
Here's the cost of what it costs you to live in taxes and rent. Here's what you're.
I think aesthetically, it's
Gonna
be a big time. It's been a long time.
Right.
There'll be some.
Transitions. But I'll tell you one thing.
Yeah. There'll be some places who self-serve through your vacuuming, and then there'll be attendants that'll run
I
you
don't-
through.
Well, I do know where
But,
they got
Yeah,
that
there's
from.
still stuff on
They
it.
got
It's,
it from
it's
Thomas.
gonna be a pretty big one. Yeah. But I just,
So we just.
they'll have a
we
conveyor
just
belt
simply
they'll pull you
cut
through.
to our ratio.
Yeah, so drive it, and
We'll take
eventually,
it.
you know, with sales, the people that are gonna get
I agree. Here's the other reason why.
I mean, you could, all we did was approve the colors.
Roy City is in fact
the building.
managing 4,300.
There'll be more
It's our
layout.
right.
final comes.
We manage
Nice
6,000,
house.
and so we're doing all of the labor, we're taking care of all the infrastructure to support it. And therefore, you have to ask the question, this is a new build.
Right.
Why would they not come into it?
Right, here's the other
So
problem.
you'll access it west of Burger Bar.
If
Oh,
we
so you will
don't
have
annex
access.
inventory and they hook
You'll have to
into
go
the
down
railroad
5300
line, and
and then
something
turn
goes
in
wrong with the
west of Burger Bar.
we're
And
responsible
then you'll
for
come
fixing
out of
it.
it.
So if we
and
tear up
you can either
part
go
of their,
out on 219
their
or
roads,
you can circle back
then
around.
we're in their
Vacuum and
liability
stuff.
of they can charge us whatever they want. He says just wait, and if you just, and
But they
especially
do have,
if
they do have curb cuts
it's
still on 219.
Well, and you know, we tried.
Right, annex it.
Yeah, I mean, by virtue of that being spread out the way boundary,
Tried years ago.
but they probably should.
Those ones that are down on 4,300.
You're not gonna turn there and try to go down two. If that's the case, then you're gonna wanna go out.
By John and Paul for.
Yeah, here's the other problem,
Now.
is.
You know, being that it's
7
not
houses,
self-serve,
5 of them are paying double for the other 2, not paying anything.
I was worried about.
So why are we charging 5 of them double water?
Well, I was
And these
worried
other
about
2, we're not charging.
self-serve car wash.
Why aren't we?
Just
Really
discrepancy.
how much money they
Well,
make.
let's start
No,
charging.
yeah,
Let's start
right,
charging.
right.
And that can happen.
Yeah, and it does, it falls just correct when you have so many different items. Okay, let's go. Ready, Judge? Ready, Judge?
What's the next topic, Mayor?
Next item on the agenda, city
There you
manager.
go. This is you, bro.
Since this is a work session, here's a working document for everybody.
Seems like it'd be. I don't need this.
No, we'll give him.
This is,
No,
this is a work.
it's on Riverdale, but it's to the
Thank you.
south end of the.
You're welcome. Sorry, boss.
Potato on that.
What's that?
Expect us to work? It's 7 o'clock, I gotta go.
Yeah.
All right, and I do too. Now, what we needed to do is, a while ago, this came up as an issue in the city, is who reports to who, and I think that's what started it all off. Do department heads and employees report to the city manager, or do they report to the mayor? So with that, we started looking at different things, the powers of the mayor, powers of city council, and the powers and duties of the city manager. So before you've seen, this is pretty similar to what you've seen in the past, but I thought this would give us an opportunity to go through it, because our primary thing, as I recall, when we talked about who department heads are to report to, or the city employees, that was all to be the city manager. Is that how the council wanted to go with that? Versus the mayor? Because remember,
One more time, sorry.
okay, we had a conflict in our law, and it comes from the state law, and most cities have this too. When they adopted the powers of the mayor, there was a provision, and it reads here, and we've lined that out, but it says, the administrative powers, authorities, and duties are vested in the mayor. The mayor is the chief executive officer to whom all employees should report. That creates a lot of problems when you have a city manager form of government. When you have a city manager, typically, that's the person they're going to report to. But what I noticed, most cities still have that provision in that's, from state law. So what we're doing here is we wanted, at least that was the direction that I thought we were going, is that wouldn't be the case anymore. You would be reporting to your city manager, and that's why you hire a city manager. So what I've done there, you'll notice, and I've mentioned this before, everything that I've got a line going through the middle, that exists in our current code, but we're getting rid of that, okay? So if you notice right at the top, we've got Chapter 6, Mayor and City Council, 1-6-3, it used to say administration vested in the mayor. I think we should just say mayor there, okay? Because some other cities say it that way. I don't know that I saw anybody else who said it that way, but if we say more than that, it looks like it's wholly vested in the mayor. Now, there are administrative powers that are vested in the mayor, and what I did here, I've got the mayor as the chief executive officer. I'll be really brief with that. Chief executive officer and chief administrative officer quite often are used interchangeably, and in fact, in different things that I've taken a look at, they say that they're supposed to be interchangeable. They are a little different, okay? So we can still call it a chief executive officer, but have the chief administrative officer be our city manager who would handle administration. So if you, and then what we've got are the specific powers that we will have the mayor do. Now, a lot of these are right out of state code. Some of them I've found in some other areas. Bob, I think you had some too that came out of that article that I showed you on national municipal government. So what we have here, we looked at before, but it's got these typical powers: the chair of the meeting, to attend and officiate at ceremonial functions, or where official representation is needed. You still have the mayor signing all these documents, the ordinances, license deeds, unless the mayor delegates those, or unless we delegate that somehow else. The power of appointment, that was an issue that we were trying to figure out what to do. The way I thought that the council wanted to go with this, and there's different ways we could do it, but based on our discussions, I thought with the mayor's appointments would just be city recorder, city treasurer, and then administrative boards, commissions, or committees, that the council wanted to be able to make the city council as a whole make the appointments for department heads.
Right, wording's fine. With appointment, advice, and consent, it's always been that way.
I think that's fine,
Yeah, okay, because sometimes it could be, so with department heads, though, do you want that to be a city manager, excuse me, a city council
No.
appointment?
No.
Okay, let's,
Worded just right. With the consent of the city council.
okay,
Yeah.
okay, wait. This doesn't say, though, if you look at number 11, it says
You
you're
identify
just
two positions, recorder.
recorder, treasurer, and then all these other administrative boards. It doesn't say department heads.
Agreed. That's great.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Okay, so this is good, the way we've got it.
That statement's good.
Okay,
Yes.
all right.
But I just want to make sure that we're clear. The issue in terms of who makes the appointment for department heads. Who makes the appointment of department heads? Who?
No, we were
No.
just gonna change
No.
it out.
It's real,
It
should be.
No matter what
Council.
wording you put, he might say, yes, it's the mayor's appointment, unless the council agrees the appointment doesn't happen. It's just a fact. That's the
Yeah,
way it is.
yeah.
Here's the reason, Dave.
Okay.
Police chief.
Yep.
Here's the law. The chief of police or marshal of each city of the 3rd, 4th, or 5th class, that's us, shall be under the direction, control, and supervision of the person or body that appoints the chief or marshal.
Well, that could be any of us.
Agreed. But if we say that the appointment is made by the council, then guess who the police chief works for? The council, by law.
Person or body. or
Yeah.
whatever. We
So
could,
if-
we could put our ordinance, he reports to the
The
city
city
manager.
manager.
Agreed. He is in
The
fact.
body.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
could you
What I'm
just say
saying
he's
is-
appointed by the city manager and approved by the council?
Exactly.
Yeah,
As
yeah,
long
that's
as we
fine.
understand
Yeah.
that.
That's fine.
Yeah.
That keeps us in compliance with the law.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay. No, that's
To me,
what
that
you
makes
said,
the
Jason.
most sense.
Yes.
All department heads are appointed by the city manager, but with approval and consent by the council.
Fair enough.
And
That's the way it should be.
consistent
Okay.
with our next topic, because in there it says, the city manager
good with
makes
that?
recommendations
Yeah.
for the
Oh, yeah.
department director, appointment
Correct.
of the governing body.
True.
It's very consistent if we write it that way.
Agreed.
I'm okay with that.
Okay, so we'll have the city manager make the appointments with
Consent,
of
advice
the
and
council.
consent of council.
Okay.
Recommendation.
Okay.
Everything look good on the mayor stuff, you guys?
Let me just walk through a few things that I offered that didn't show up in this review. Here's what I said in terms of the mayor. I said, the mayor is the executive officer to oversee the general control and management of the municipality and help lead the city to achieve the goals and objectives assigned by the city council. The day-to-day responsibilities of the municipality are assigned to this chief administrative officer, city manager, to which all city employees report, right up front. So there'll be no question about that. Then I said, and I'm just basically telling you what the current ordinance says, so I'm definitizing this a bit about the mayor. Here's what it says. The mayor has a vote in the city council in the selection or removal of the individual of the city manager position. Let me repeat that. That's what the current personnel policy says. The mayor has a vote. Okay? Have the authority to obligate the city to signing all the ordinances, resolutions, appoint and qualify persons, we have that in here now, in conjunction with the city council, provide supervision of the city manager. Somebody's going to give him a performance review.
Yeah, he
No,
took
that-
care of that.
we already-
And he
we
took care of that
already
on
did
number
that,
16.
Yeah, he already
Okay.
stated right here.
Performs annual, there you go, got it, okay?
Got it.
Perform the annual review, attempt to influence policymakers. It's not important, but we can do it state legislature. Promote public involvement in the
Yeah.
municipality and activities
We did that.
there.
Got you.
Act as a representative of the municipality both in the outside the city and promote city locally and nationally.
Yep.
Participate in fostering activities to enhance the economical, social, and environmental well-being of the municipality and its residents.
Did there?
Out
15
there, is that 15?
Yep, 15.
Okay, and be the chairperson and preside at all meetings of the council and manage the meeting agenda.
Number one.
Okay, last but not least,
Okay,
the mayor may
okay.
add an agenda item to the city council meeting and convene a special meeting of the city council.
Right.
Bob, those-
Any one of us can put an item on each.
Those,
Not-
Okay,
those,
we-
okay, those, that comes under
difference?
It's in.
Where we have the council meeting procedures.
Correct.
That's where that's at.
Okay.
And I don't,
With
and
that, okay, so
I don't
what
want
Bob's saying is
it up with mayor's powers and duties.
Okay,
Okay.
so that's where we need to separate.
That's-
So that city manager, or city mayor duties are in that agenda, it does not need to
It
be
deals with the
this.
rules of procedure and for council meetings, so who can put it on, who, you know,
Okay, but let's not,
Okay.
let's don't be confused, I'll reference that, so there's no question in terms of you understand the mayor's role. As any council member, the city manager, and the mayor can put an agenda on any council meeting.
Correct.
But the only people that can call a special meeting is the mayor or 2 city council members. That's the policy.
Right.
yeah,
So-
but we don't need that here. That's what I'm saying.
Well, I'm
we-
just,
And that's
here's the
in-
reason
Yeah.
for my comment.
Okay.
Right.
Is that I'm not so sure everybody understood that. To call this meeting had to either be one or 2 of us or the mayor. Nobody else can call a special meeting.
Okay,
in
well, this is a
town.
work session, not a special meeting.
Okay. There surely is a difference, right? Assign or appoint a member of the council with the advice and consent of the council to administer one or more departments of the municipality.
Yeah, and that's in state law,
Okay, so
yeah.
it's
And
just a symbol.
here's what we, we could go and put everything in state law
No, I just want.
in here. And I think what we proposed is considerably more than every other city has.
But
But
here's the piece that, Andy, and I like what you got, we're almost there, but we've talked about nothing about the city council.
But is that,
I've got, we're not there yet.
Next page.
Okay, we're not there.
Because we're talking about the mayor.
Let's read it.
But let's, before we go there, I want to go back here a little bit. So let's,
Are we all good with what Andy submitted on the bill?
yes,
Yes. Marge?
yes.
Yes.
Mayor,
Okay,
Okay.
good. You're good with that.
let's go to the next one. Now we're in the city manager. And you share with me where it talks about the city council.
That might be in his other,
it'll be there, okay?
Okay.
Okay, well, let's look at, I'm just going in the order we have here. Typically, what I saw with every city, they didn't have a real special section with city manager, or excuse me, city council, so I threw one in, okay? Most of them just, they leave it with governing body, and they don't add anything else, so we have that, but I'm not going to go through appointment of officers, we're not really changing anything from what we discussed there before. I think with city manager, we leave that as is. It's an appointment that's for an indefinite term.
And just being politically correct here, there's a term that says he.
Yeah, we shouldn't have that. So that really should say, and we didn't catch that one, but it should say city manager. So it's an indefinite term, there's an employment contract with the city manager, the mayor signs it on behalf of the city. Duties, I've included, I didn't have this here before, but we've got the city manager shall be the chief administrative officer of the city, to whom all employees shall report. So you see that in red? That was always up with the mayor. So I'm moving that over just so we don't have any confusion there.
You okay with that, Mayor? Yep. Okay.
There was a Part B, if you notice, that's lined out. If you recall, that was in at one of our other meetings. I've completely taken that out. We'll deal with that a little bit as to how I thought you guys discussed that when I get to that.
I want to go back up to number 1.
Yeah,
Because we've never done this before. The council shall approve an employment contract. We've always just, okay, this is the guy we want.
Uh-huh.
Let you deal with the contract.
right, I put the terms together and that,
So
right.
you signed, the mayor signed, that's pretty much it. So
Yeah.
Is that okay, or do you still want to say each of us needs, because this says we need to approve it?
Okay, Mayor.
We
can
we
we
could,
just add, can we just
let's
add
see.
a word with, city,
Council
shall,
approval.
yeah, something like that.
Once the
And direct-
employment is approved by the council, direct the mayor to sign the contract. Is that good? You got it?
Yeah, something like that, where we just direct
that
them, that we don't have to sign
Once-
the contract.
Yeah, well, your preference
Once
isn't to come
employment's
back.
approved, have the mayor sign the contract.
Yeah.
What'll happen is the mayor, I'm sure, will take it to the council
Yeah.
and review with the council and appoint the office and manager, and then contract being drawn up. we can go ahead and sign the contract with the fire.
So I just think, I think it's silly to say, okay, we picked this guy and come back and say, all right, now let's go.
Everybody runs the crap.
Yeah.
I agree.
Because you guys will, I mean, typically we talk about the terms and what
Yeah,
we
I-
agree on most of those terms. Okay.
Sorry, man.
Nope, that's good. So if you go down to 2B, I deleted the language that was in there before.
Thank you.
Okay.
And I think we've all seen everything that we have here. On I, though, I did add a little bit more language to the city manager shall attend all council meetings. I put in unless otherwise excluded by the city council in an executive session. I don't know that we necessarily have to have that there, but I threw it in.
spells it out.
Reduce it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the city manager would be able to do it.
Okay, that's it with city manager, unless you've got any questions.
Well, here's one that I think that was discussed in a different venue, but I think it's a good discussion. And I've yet to find it anywhere in the policies that I've read. And I said this, first thing, the city manager is responsible, shall respond to residents' inquiries and resolve complaints. There's no provision that I found except the position description, and it was a little vague in the position description. But
Agreed.
that does this council want to make sure that the city manager is engaging
In the public.
in the public's interest?
Yeah.
Yeah, if the
Yeah.
mayor's
Oh, on
not, yes.
Yeah, give me that language again, Bob. The
Yes,
city manager
big,
shall,
That's one of the
Yeah.
reasons. why
Which,
the city
which
manager-
line?
That's where we got.
Just
It's
add it.
just
Oh, you
one
gotta
that-
add it.
Oh, add,
Yeah,
oh.
we need to
Provided-
add
yeah,
it.
so it's an ad,
I
okay.
provided it to
Okay.
you, but it's
It's in-
number 18 on that list I gave you. And then, I don't know if it was clear, do you want to state it here, or are you going to allow the personnel policy to govern it? But the hiring and removal of department heads are,
I think that it's not in here because that was something that.
We want it out.
It's coming up.
Wanted it out,
Oh.
so it's not in here.
It's coming up.
So
So
it's located
let me
where?
just go back. Tell me where that, I want to make sure that I get down what you said. I think you said
18.
18.
you got my list that I sent you?
Yeah, I've got
Number
it.
18 on the list that I sent you. Under the city manager shall,
He's got page
page 8,
8,
Okay, one more to go.
18.
just
Okay.
highlighted.
Okay,
Yeah, I have one question if I can.
you bet.
On the city manager, under F. So the city manager under F may reorganize, consolidate, or combine offices, positions, or departments with the approval of the council. If I want to do something, you know,
If you want to take,
whatever operationally, we're talking administrative for me to say, hey, I think you're better suited instead of in this position, I want you over here. And not department directors, because that's obviously approved by the council. But if I want to make some small changes as the city manager, I think F should allow me, or whoever the city manager is, the opportunity to do that and not say, hey, I want to move this person. Obviously, I'm responsible for the fiscal and the budget and all that, but if I want to move somebody from working, whatever, then the city manager should be able to have that, as if he's the chief administrative officer, shouldn't have to go back to the council and say, can I take this person that's a non-exempt employee, whatever we see the best fit, if that makes sense.
yeah,
saying
so was
with
this
that-
something that was in there before, or is this something, Andy, that you added?
No, it's something that's added. So anything that I've got in red, that's something new.
Are you saying
Here-
with that?
So we could delete with the approval of the city council.
For non-exempt.
It's up, well, okay, the way this is written, it lets let's say the city manager decides, hey, I've got two departments, I can combine these into one department. This happened at Ogden City. They had community development, and I can't remember what the other was. They let one department head go, they combined it. We've kind of done something similar. We did it by ordinance when remember Tony Reynolds was here, economic development, and I want to say community services, but planning and all that. But what we did with that is we, by ordinance, gave that economic development to the mayor. We left the other where it was. But let's say the city manager just decides, well, this is how it currently is. Jay put me over
You just don't let it happen.
planning and zoning and community development. So, without having to come to the council.
The way I see this is, if you're messing with the organizational chart, then it has to go through the city council. If it's making minor changes. like
Non-exempt
we're talking about,
employees.
Non-exempt employees, yeah, I mean, if you feel like an employee's gonna do better, in payroll versus collections, I don't know.
I understand exempt employees are appointed by the city manager and approved by the council, so likewise, to change anything has to get approval by the council, which makes total sense. But for non-exempt employees, if I want to make a little move or change, this says I got to go to you for everything I do, and I think there ought to be some autonomy with that.
That's the reason why we hire
What's
a
some
city
good wording for
manager.
that, Andy?
Yeah,
And I'm not 100% sure
what if we just
this,
take out that line?
this does that.
Or what if we
I'll-
just take out the,
If you take that out, you have to have different wording.
well, I was
because
gonna say, why
Brad-
can't we just take out approval of the city council?
Because Brad said you could still say, okay, I'm now combining finance and fire department, getting crap back, which is true. I mean, city
Yeah.
manager
Or
wouldn't do
the city
that,
manager may reorganize
but he could
That's-
combine departments.
or combine.
And you're going to want approval if,
Right, if that
any
happens.
structural change like that, you
I like
want that.
It's not in the, what is the organizational chart?
Yeah, if it deals with the organizational chart, it needs to go through the council. Any other minor changes like you're talking about, you should have that authority already, just to administer your position the way you need
Yeah.
to meet the needs of the city.
Well,
most
add
efficiently.
another line there.
So I'm just saying, I'm not gonna say this isn't gonna happen, I'm just using this example. Let's say I wanted to move Amy, because I think she'll be better at HR, and take Jill, put Jill in a risk management position, stuff like that.
You can do that, because you're not changing a position, you're changing an individual.
I'm not saying that's what I'm gonna do, I was
So-
just using that as an
How about if
example.
we just take out more departments? Because you can't move a department.
Yeah,
Yeah, that works?
That works.
So,
Take
yeah,
out
just
what?
take out more
Just take
departments.
out departments.
Consolidate or combine offices and positions with and without, we get out with improved cash.
right.
Reorganize, consolidate.
Yeah, that works. Just get rid of.
And you're okay with combining offices?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's more efficient and good.
So we just delete departments there, and we're good. Okay.
Because I'm not gonna consolidate police and fire without the council. Yeah, I'm just saying, just
Public safety.
just the minor data. There you go. No, it's not.
Public safety chief. Look at him smiling over there.
It's cold.
It is, a cold draft just came from
Yeah,
somewhere.
it's cold.
I'm ready for
Okay, last page. I just threw this in. Like I said, most cities don't say anything really about the city council. They just have that governing body part. So here's some things that I thought we could throw in, and none of this is red line because I've created the whole thing new. So again, I mentioned city council is comprised of 6 members, one of whom shall be the mayor. City council exercises any executive or administrative powers that haven't been given to the mayor or city manager. That's state law, that's right in the code. So, city council may pass any ordinance to regulate, require, prohibit, govern, control, or supervise any activity, business, conduct, or condition authorized by statute or any other provision of law. It's like we got a typographical error, we will get taken care of.
Yeah, air conditioning
Oh.
kicked on.
City council can make and enforce rules, regulations, and procedures for its internal operations, similar to what we've done here, okay, with the council rules of procedure when you're in council meetings.
And does it need to say by majority of the council?
No, because,
Because that's just common.
yeah, yep, it's in state law, and I'm,
Okay.
Okay, now we can take out E, right? City council shall make all department head appointments or termination of employment? Because we're going to leave that with city manager, right? With advice? Okay.
I mean, that's still a true statement,
It is.
but it's a
Here's what I
recommendation of the city manager.
Okay.
Not all the time, though.
Yeah, because there'll be times where it won't be, the city manager may not recommend it, but the council may. Okay.
How do we do that?
Okay, the city council may,
I think that's fine.
you know, I'll work on that, because we could have it just city council, or we could have it at the request of the department head. But you're going to have to approve any terminations of department heads. Okay, so does that make?
Which one are you on?
Because since, well, yeah, I'm on E on city council.
Okay,
But
sorry.
we have already where we're going to have those appointments made by the city manager with advice and consent of the council. So that's the appointment. But on termination, we'll have the city council shall approve the termination of any department head, right?
Well, we're doing.
And we could leave it at that way, because we don't have to say at the request of the city manager, or, because it could come from the council too.
Mhm.
As long as that's legal, yeah.
No, agree.
Okay. Okay, the last sentence, I tried to, or number F, I tried to put something together that cover, you know, we were talking about in the last meeting, and I think Marge and Carlene might have brought this up, on certain language you wanted with how the city council can talk to department heads or employees. Take a look at this, if that meets what you want, or if we don't want it. I haven't seen anything like it in other cities. The one that I threw in before was from another city,
Okay.
but
The only part that I think, there's a couple things that I was thinking, and then Bob and I are kind of having a side conversation about it, is I think we need to have, Bob kind of worded it, but notify the city manager. Because like we talked about, it's fine, you know, if we see a water main break, hey, I'm going to call Ross and say, hey, Ross, we've got a water main break, will you go take care of it? But then I think it also needs to be that the city manager is also notified.
yeah.
You know, that it's our responsibility to notify the city manager of that
The reason
situation.
is, if another council member comes to me and say, hey, why are we taking this out? Well, I don't know about it, I'm not sure, then it makes it look bad, you know, on my
Well, it
end.
goes back to what you said at the first, communication.
Yeah,
So, I mean, it's just, so I think we just need to add, to make sure, you know, to notify city manager. The other part that I'm kind of looking at, and, okay, so it's the last sentence. However, individual council members cannot give department heads direction. Okay, so I like that, however, I mean, I think you can have a conversation with the department head and say, hey, you know, Kathy, can you give me these stats on this? Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah, no
that's
problem,
something- Yeah, no
information.
problem, okay.
Yeah.
But that's not something where you're directing her, Kathy,
Right.
hey, will you change the policy, or will you look at changing the policy that does this?
will
I
you
think
take
that's
out the
more-
stop sign at this intersection? Will you take out the speed bump? I think that's kind of what
Yeah,
we're
so
talking
how
about.
do we distinguish between, hey, talking to a department head about something and making sure that it's a direction that needs to be brought to the city council? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And recognize
And
me.
can we do a black and white, or is that a gray area and it's just something that's interpreted and that is just discussed and, you know, city council members know? Or can you make it more of a black and white sentence?
It's tough, because we're breaking new ground
I know,
here, okay?
I
'Cause
know.
Well,
nobody
Great.
specifically says it anywhere, other than what I put before you that I got from some other city before. But we didn't want it to be, from what I understood, we didn't want it to be nearly that strict. And
So we can't black and white it.
hard to black and white, but
Okay, so the thing
what I
that
tried to
I
throw
think
in
that-
were things that you were talking about that you said, hey, I want to, you know, I want to be able to call and
Let me
say,
offer
hey,
a
this,
thought, Andy, because
Yeah.
I think it's important to the conversation. What is missing from the ordinance is 165. you only got 164, that's okay.
Oh,
Let me read 165.
we just threw a number on it, okay? 'Cause
Yeah,
we
well,
probably
it's the
put
right
it,
number.
if we were to put it in, we'd put it in as
Here's
164.
what 165 says in the ordinance today. No action of the city council shall be official or any effect except when the quorum of the members is present, except as outlined, and I put in it, except as outlined 16-42, which talks, you made it F, but that's it.
Yeah.
It says this, no action of the city council shall be official or any effect except when the quorum of the members is present.
Right.
That's the law, okay? And that's B, and here's what F says in the current ordinance. It says, no ordinance, resolution, rule, regulation, contract, or other action of the governing body shall have any effect unless passed or approved at the properly held open and public meeting. That's what the law says today.
Oh, yeah.
So your question then is, if we're as a council and we direct this department head that says, go make that happen, the council has the authority to do that. But our own ordinance today says
There's a quorum.
that we can't do that unless
Right.
we're in a council.
But we're getting rid of that, Bob.
It's in there.
So
Here's
this is the proposal.
I know, but here's the key.
We're getting rid of that.
You can't, this is the interesting part of this conversation. We can't have parts of this ordinance basically conflicting each other. So when you take a shot at chapter 6, it's not just chapter 6-3 and that chapter 6-4. It's chapter 6-3, 4, and 5. And we have to, and that's the reason why I rewrote number 5 that says, except as outlined in, you called it F. So if you're going to say,
So where are you at, Bob?
unfortunately, I'm in my document.
I've got your document right here.
Okay, go to 165, meetings, procedures,
let
and
me ask
Can
policies.
we just do, I've got one, I just added one little thing. What if we do? However, individual council members cannot give department heads direction if it affects any policy or ordinances or rules changes.
Fine.
That sounds good.
Because then, I don't know, is that getting too?
I think this
big?
whole thing is common sense.
And I agree, because
If
you're
you see
in
a water
agreement.
main break, you're gonna call Ross.
I think
If
just
you
get,
see a
We could-
sinkhole, you're
we
gonna
could take
call
it out
just get rid of
altogether.
it. I'd get rid of it altogether.
We
I
could-
think that
add
to
to
me,
the
that's
communication.
not a
You're good.
policy or ordinance, you should call and say, hey, I've got a water main break.
If a citizen says, I want this done, a speed bump in the road, let me
Then-
bring that up with the council, we'll discuss it.
Right, those are just common sense things that we know. I mean, it doesn't have to be black and white, those type of things. They're never going to be, because there's always so many variables.
And I agree,
Exactly.
that's what I'm saying. I didn't know if it could be black and white or if it's more of a gray.
We could knock it out altogether.
Okay, let me go back to my point then. Here's what it says today.
Bob,
No
I know exactly what the law
What I'm
says.
asking
and-
is, are we
and-
in conflict right now if I go up there and direct Ross to put a speed bump, okay, on a street?
You're not, no, you're not supposed to be doing
Wait a
that.
minute. You're right, because it says, no action of the city council shall officially or any effect, and that's what I said, without all the members being present. That's what the law says today. So
Yeah,
that's how it says.
and it's been that way for
Now the question,
years.
well, agreed.
Yeah, so,
But that's not prevented what I just said happened. And it doesn't present what things take place. And I think what we're trying to say, if we're going to define the roles of the mayor, and we're going to define the roles of the city council, and define the roles of the city manager, then let's understand the rules of engagement.
well, we understand those rules.
Okay, well
Oh,
then.
Okay, but I'll tell you what, we don't as a council, because this debate's been going on where it's for a long time on what we can and can't do. So in our discussions before was, let's try to delineate that, and there were some suggestions made. We can take that all out and just say, okay, we follow that. This is just trying to
Let's-
clarify that. I don't, personally,
yeah.
I don't know of anybody else who's got it, but bottom line, what I think we should be doing, no council member can direct a department head and tell them what to do, on your own. You just can't do that. But there's no problem with
Okay.
going for informational purposes, any of that. Yeah.
Can I
Yeah.
say what we talked
Yeah.
about, Alex? So we met with Alex Jensen, the city manager of Layton. And it was pretty clear, because we asked him about this exact same topic. And he says, really, ultimately, it always comes down to communication. If one of you guys says, hey, there's a stop sign it's got a bolt out of it and it's hanging upside down, go fix it, no big deal, and then they just talk to the city manager and let him know. He was very clear that a council member should never give a department head a direct order. And he says, I try to talk to my council members and say, hey, if it's something major or big that needs to be communicated, it really should come to me. But it all comes down to communication. So the department director will call me and say, hey, Councilwoman Beecraft wanted me to pick up some boards. We've got a group that's going to 1900 West and picking up some boards. Perfect, no big deal. Shouldn't have to go through a process to get that to happen. You know, but you can't say to a department head, go remove this speed bump because the speed bump was put in by council and not one person. I think that's the line that we're talking about, and I think that's, you know.
It is.
I think what we have
Tell
to,
Ross to get a new street sweeper.
Right.
what you have to understand, folks, is you can't direct the department head to do something that's taking money and costing money that he's responsible for allocating out to projects.
But you can say, this piece of the sidewalk is falling apart.
Right.
So,
Would you look at it?
Right.
so I think it's more or less, and it's kind of more or less, we leave it as it is, and then I think it is
Just-
basically a instruction. So when
I'd say
new
take
city-
it out. I don't even have to say.
You don't
put
even
in
want it there?
Nope.
Okay, I was gonna say, then when new council member comes up, it's just more or less a instructional type from the city manager, hey, or this is the duties, you know.
So you're saying
Policies
take
and
out
duties.
this however?
Yep. The reason being, I'll give you a few examples. Bob, you submitted quite a few letters. That's giving direction to the city manager or the city attorney to look at things, which according to this, you couldn't do anymore.
Yeah, what I asked
When
him
you-
to do was, is that, and that's the interesting part
Right,
of
but
the
that's
conversation.
giving
But-
direction. So
but it-
according to that, we can't do
Then
that.
that
Yeah.
Right. We don't want that to happen. Same thing when you're on your committees, be it beautification, Roy Days, you still give direction to those committees, which are department heads. So that's why that shouldn't be there, because it does happen.
But you're right with that, but we agreed that because the mayor, you have the authority to establish boards, Roy Days Board, Beautification Board, that by doing that, you assign then that city council member to be
That
responsible for that authority, and the council voted and agreed,
But
giving
then-
you latitude then to literally even set up a budget, if that be, because you're assigned to that board.
Well,
Right.
that budget still is approved.
It's approved.
Right.
But it's
Everything's
approved.
You know,
approved.
and the action typically, like, let's
But
say
I'm saying that's the
signs.
reason to get rid of that,
Yeah.
because those things do happen.
Okay.
When we did the
So
signs.
then like you're saying, then it would cause conflict later
I'm
down
okay
the
with
road.
that. I
It's
mean,
there.
the only
Okay.
intent then would be to strike that line
Okay,
out of that particular F clause, and everything else seems to be pretty reasonable.
yep.
Now, let me just ask for a couple more
We need
things
to
to thought,
notify-
okay? I mentioned, just for clarification purposes, I said, two council members may order the convening of a special meeting of the council. That's the law.
That's
Okay.
true. Yeah, and what I'm saying, Bob, is
You don't need it there.
that we don't need it there.
Okay, just be aware of that.
'Cause
Any
the-
council member can add an agenda, and there seems to be a little confusion, and maybe it's worth clarification. Best I can tell is the city council shall select a mayor pro tem who will preside in the absence of the mayor.
Okay, my interpretation has been different than what we've carried out in the city in the past, because when I read that ordinance, it's like, okay, the council, let's say the mayor's not here that night, so you do that. But I'll tell you, a lot of cities do it the way that Roy City's been doing it, where you just appoint somebody as mayor pro tem and you go on. Either way's fine, but when I look at the statute, it almost sounds like this is just something you do on a,
Mayor
Yeah.
appointment, advice and consent.
So you're suggesting the mayor makes the appointment and the vice and consent of the council?
With the advice.
no, I'll tell you my interpretation. I don't have the statute in front of me, but I've looked at it before. I think it's something you make at that meeting itself. When you read that statute, nowhere does it say to me, like, you appoint somebody at the first of a term, and then they do that for so many
Here's
years.
how I read it. I read it is, it's not the mayor's input.
No,
When I read that
it's,
statute in Roy policy, it basically told me,
It's-
which is why I put it here, it basically
It's-
told me is, it's the council, not the mayor. He doesn't have a vote.
That's exactly right. Yeah, unless the council has delegated that to the mayor.
So
But-
where do
That's
you,
with all appointments. The mayor doesn't have a vote. He just has an appointment with the consent of the council.
With the exception, with the exception of city manager. City manager.
Yeah,
But
so,
is there confusion in terms of who actually makes the pro tem appointment in your minds? And should we clarify that? That was the only reason why I put it in here, because it's unclear.
I mean,
I thought we did it,
In the past, the
We
mayor
voted
has
as a
made a
council.
recommendation to
Recommendation.
the council, and the council has voted
Okay.
upon that.
Are we okay with that? Yep.
Yeah,
Then
that's fine.
would that be something you would put in the
Yeah.
mayor's role then, as saying is the mayor makes a recommendation for the mayor?
Well, let's see what
The
we
mayor
have
makes
here.
appointments, so.
Okay, then let me offer one last thought. We didn't, there's a couple of things on chapter 3, I'd just like to ask you a question.
Chapter 3?
Chapter,
Hold on.
it's not in yours, I just
Okay.
want to try to, do you know what advice and consent means? Is it clear in your mind what advice and consent means?
It means a council majority, is what it comes down to.
Okay, let me tell you what the league says. Advice means that they can think about the proposed appointment and what type of person they would suggest. That's the advice. Consent means yes or no. So,
And
are we
here-
okay with
here-
that definition?
here's a definition that I like, that I've read. It said it's, advice means the council's consulted, asked for advice, and they give their consent. And it's a way to moderate the powers of the executive branch. So, but to me, like what the league says, I'm going, okay, advice means what they think about the proposed appointment and what type of person they would suggest.
Right.
I mean, I don't really, there's a couple of things. One, we may not need it at all, okay? We could throw it in there, but we could also throw a lot of definitions, like appoint or approve
No,
or
I'll just-
we,
I just offered it.
and
I just offered it. If you don't think
No.
it's important, then we don't have to worry about it.
No, and
I
I-
don't know if there was a discussion on that.
yeah, and I mean, if you want it in there, but that's, I mean, it's to be consulted and then give their consent.
Fair enough. Let me just a couple last things, if I can, and I apologize if I'm pushing this around, because there's other pieces of these ordinances that really need to be fixed, in my opinion. So even though we're focusing on Chapter 6 and Chapter 7, there are other components of that that also need to be fixed.
Bob, you had ratify here also.
Yeah, but, ratify, that's a definition I can go out and
Yeah,
like.
here's
Here's one that's in our current policy right now. This is under C, 1-7-4, Mayor. It says that the Management Service Department maintains the computer systems throughout the city. Is IT assigned now to
You know,
Management Services?
no, let me tell you what the problem is. Okay,
that's a load.
Sterling Codifiers, who's been,
Understand?
no,
This is the law.
it's a,
Just reading the law.
no, I'll explain it to you, okay?
Okay.
That's been changed, okay?
Okay.
So this is old, but Sterling Codifiers, the reason why we've hired a new company to put our code together, they're going back several years of not getting our stuff done, and we're paying them money to do this, and they haven't, so it's frustrating. So what you're mentioning here that's in our current code book and online, they still haven't posted it, and they have a little provision that talks about that. This may not be, so we've got a new company, and we might have even started on them,
Okay.
I don't know, last
Would you
week
just
or...
also check then?
Yeah,
We're
'cause
still
it's-
calling out a recreational complex department.
No, that
Removed.
got changed a long time ago. So
That's incredible.
the code that you're looking at is not updated, and it's been really frustrating. And so but we've got somebody new to do that, okay?
Thank you. That's all I
I
have.
was in and addressed that with them the other day, Andy. I talked to the people from the company that's now doing our code. For years and years and years, we had a company that was supposed to have kept the code up to date constantly. Did not happen. And we now have a new company aboard that is working daily to bring this code into alignment with what it should be.
Okay. Yeah, I got just a comment to make about this, what we've been doing, okay? Technically, we wanted to do everything we did. This needed to be done. The mayor and the council provided, yes, that needed to be done. all right? But my opinion now that we've made this clear, any policy change should be recommended from the city manager. That's that person's job to do. To say, okay, here's this policy, I ran into this issue, hey, maybe I need to change this and go through that way. If we're giving him the powers and duties, that's where it should probably come from. Just my opinion.
And I think that's kind of what we're doing.
Right.
We decided that we didn't have to take the whole policy procedure manual in one chunk, but we can do it a little bit at a time. Bob brings up some good points. That yes, there are some other issues, but those issues should be dealt with by the city manager, given to us with the changes he wants to make.
And then come.
And our comments and stuff should be submitted back to him, he puts it together and then submits it for our final.
And I don't disagree. I think the problem that takes place is that when there are policies that Roy City has in place, however they got there, and the law changes, and we don't update the policies to be compliant with state law, we have a problem. And here's a good example,
And
Brad.
I think Bob,
Here's a good example.
going to get there.
But who's going to do that?
That's
Well,
Andy's job.
Yeah, that's my job. And let me just say something too. Okay. I'll say something too. This is from Heidi Leachhead and Mary Ann May. These guys cost $300-400 an hour. They looked at our policy and procedure manual and they said, would you mind if we showed this to other cities, because it was the best manual that they had seen. So we do our best to keep up with everything, and we try to, and I think we are. I mean, the things that we're talking about tonight are dealing with inconsistencies that have been in there, and so we're addressing those inconsistencies.
Well,
And trying to make things clear as how do you want it. So it's not necessarily that there's some state law policy that, go ahead, Bob.
Well,
Go ahead.
I'll give you a 7-page document that talks about the personnel policies.
I can go through your
And I will
7-page
indicate to
document,
you-
every issue on there, okay?
So-
But it's just a disagreement in policy. It's not that state
It's a
law
conflict
says
of comment.
you can't have that.
Now, here's my point, Bob.
But see,
Council
Bob,
council member to bring this up, Bob. I agree with that, okay? Ultimately, though, he's our legal opinion. He is, his advice, we need to listen to. Well, yes, we're going to disagree at times, but
Yep.
we need to, that's our man, that's our person, we stand behind that. If he thinks there's a problem with it, he'll let us know. If he thinks we're okay,
Oh,
he
you let
thinks
us
we're
know.
okay.
Okay, so here's what I'll do for you, Dave. Here's what the law says, okay? This is exempt employees. These are people who are at-will employees who are exempt. So this is not all people who in fact are non-exempt employees have bargaining and appeal rights. The exempt employees do not, they're at will. In the state law, it says the fire chief, the deputy chief, the department heads, the superintendent is on this list. And this one just knocked me out of my chair, and Andy and I talked about this briefly. It says every secretary and every administrative assistant who supports a department head is in fact an exempt employee, an at-will employee. Which means, what it says to me is, those people basically can and will be treated just like a department head, according to the law. And that can't be. And that's in direct conflict to our personnel policy, and this is state law.
Well,
So
and
I'm going to give it to
yeah,
Andy
and I'll
again.
say this, okay, and I appreciate you giving that to me, okay?
It's right there, I'm just reading what it says.
Yeah, I know, yeah, but a lot of times, there's interpretation, courts rule on these types of things, and you have state laws that are passed, and they go into statute, and then there's a disagreement, there's confusion, it doesn't make sense, it's contradictory to maybe what federal law says or something else. So there's cases that are, so beyond just looking at the statute, you have to look to interpretation. And so you go to cases and you do those things.
We read something, but we are not legal attorneys. okay?
Right.
And Andy is, so that's where we come from. Straight up, I disagree with Andy on sometimes. I said,
Yep.
Andy, I don't think the law says this, but he says, no, Dave, you're wrong.
Yep.
You know what? Okay, I'm wrong, great, whatever, I might disagree with it, but Andy, I go with that.
Right.
I don't disagree with your comment, Dave. My point to the conversation, do as a city council member have the responsibility to bring it to his attention.
Sure. And then it's up to them.
Yeah,
to
that's
say what you've
information.
done.
That's
Right.
information.
But one thing I
it's
think
not
too, as a
proof.
city attorney, I think I should be able to, and I appreciate, and I mean, if you see something, let me know that, I appreciate it. Because I'll tell you, we go to those conferences and every year they have so many things that they try to update us. But I also think that I've got to have some kind of ability to determine what my priorities are too, because I'm looking at trying to get bond documents taken care of, and then I have to get onto something that maybe a council member thinks is the important thing. But when we're sitting here and then we've got a request because there's been a crime committed that involves a member of a community not in our city that could lose its job, and we've got to make sure that that's given out correctly, or if I'm working on several of our lawsuits that we are, and we've got to have discovery requests, and those have to be responded to. I know how to prioritize those things, and I appreciate any other input, but sometimes looking at a policy doesn't reach the level of those. So I'm here every day. I'm working as hard as I can. I appreciate any of that, but I don't like the inference that there's stuff out here and we're doing things wrong. Because I can tell you, when you look at what other cities have, I think this document we have here that we prepared is more than any other city has right now, and I feel really good about that. But those are the things that I'm looking at, and those are the things I'm trying to deal with every day. So, you know, I may not be going through a definition section and a policy trying to figure out should I add advice and consent or not. I'd like that. I think in cities where you have a huge staff, you can get into some more of those things, but when you're a city this small and you've got to have somebody handling bonds and doing all these different various types of things that I've got to be on top of, that's what I do. So,
And Andy, I don't challenge that and don't question your ability. You're the hardest working attorney I've ever seen. Let me make it clear, okay? We are talking about people policy in Chapter 7 and Chapter 6. We're talking about literally shaping the ordinance by which the mayor, the city council, and the city manager will operate.
right.
Now, I go up there and I do my homework. I don't do this because I have nothing better to do. I look at it and I try to say, okay, does this make sense? And I check the city manager based on statute. I check exactly what the city council's supposed to do based on what state law says and what our own ordinance says. And by the way, Andy, there are conflicts.
Oh,
I'm
Bob,
only-
Bob,
but let me finish.
there
It's a
are,
good
but-
conversation. Let me finish the conversation. My obligation to this conversation is to simply say, Andy, and you know I did this, here, a week or so ago, here's some things.
Oh,
And I
you
sent them all
did,
to you.
in which
And that was fine.
Rich in trying to do these other things. So what I did this weekend, Bob, I've got a comment and I can go over everything you put in here. But that, I had to, instead of maybe working on some of these other things, I had to go through each one of these, and I've got comments, and we haven't talked about all of them, but I've got comments by every single one
And
of
you
them.
did great, and much of
So-
what I said to you, you've now incorporated in the current policy that we do have, and I appreciate that. I think I'm ready to support this particular discussion. I think I'm ready. But here's the point. What frustrates me in terms to no end is have policies that are conflicting, because the people that have to work with these need to understand the difference. Let me finish. Second, which I think is important, is the fact is, if there's something that happens, something in law comes, and Andy, you can only do so much.
Right.
But let me just say, if I see something, and I do this to you, and I do it to you, you're the only two people I send it to, including the mayor. I will simply bring the information to the table, redline it, and tell you, is there a problem with the current policy? It's not me for deciding whether it's right or wrong, it's simply me to present it to you to make that determination. And you have chosen, your words, to take a lot of what I thought was right and incorporate it in what we just approved in Chapter 6 and Chapter 7.
Right, and a lot of that came from the documents that I
Exactly.
provided you the other
And
day.
it's great.
Yeah,
We're
so.
there. I think we're there.
I got a question.
But I'm
for you,
saying
Bob.
to you
On
that-
that comment, I have a question for you. If he
Yes.
comes back, if either one of them come back and say, Bob, I think we're fine. Can you deal with that, live with that?
Yes, and that's why I said this. I picked this document up, and I read that. And I'm saying is, who in their right mind at the state legislature would put a secretary or an administrative staff that's answerable to department head as being an at-will employee that basically doesn't have, by law, doesn't have the rights of appeal? That's what that document says. That bothers the snot out of me.
But
And
you
so I'm
also got to
saying,
realize the
And-
flip side of that is they are those this is why it's done, because Mayor gets appointed, he hires me as his assistant.
Yes.
New regime comes over, I'm not
Exactly.
keeping that person. That's why. it's
That's
that way.
exactly what
That's
it's
why
like.
it is.
And that's what they do. They
That's what they do.
let a mayor choose his administrative assistant.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And here was the reason for the comment. The reason for the comment, Andy, was, and remember, I showed it to you tonight.
Yeah, I remember,
And you have
Bob.
a chance
We're
to
right in my
look at it.
office, yeah, and I told you we'd look into it, so.
That's right. So that was my point. So sometimes the very law by which we're governed by creates confusion
Yeah.
within our
But
ordinance.
to me, it's an approach issue too, because instead of having a conversation with me in the office, then it's brought up here like, hey, you're deficient, you're not doing your job.
That's not what I
Here we've
said.
got a, here we've
That's not what I
got
said.
a, yeah,
I didn't
something
say
in
any
you.
of that.
Okay, but
Here's what I
that's,
said.
you don't, but that's
That's
how
what
I
I
interpret it, Bob. That's how it
No more
comes
said.
off.
No more said.
Let me bring this to a head. You know, we need to review, we've been operating with the same staff for how long? One attorney, legal staff, and almost the whole, every department becomes inundated with things that are going on in this city because we don't actually have the staff. Maybe as a council, folks, we need to sit back and say, do we have enough people to get the job done? We just hired a company to come in and recodify our code and update our codes. And, you know, you've got one attorney that's been trying to work on that for years. We have one attorney that comes in and prosecutes, handles the court cases and things. So maybe as a council, we need to sit down and look at ourselves and say, maybe we need to sit down with our department heads and review the needs realistically. Are we getting
Okay.
it done? And that
So-
falls on my shoulder.
Okay, so let me bring this up. So it was brought to our attention last budget session to hire a couple of more employees. It was shot down right as minute we started. We didn't even let the department heads explain why they wanted these other positions to help them. It was shot down. Why are you hiring? We do not need it. We are not going to add it to the budget. So if we want to do that and we want to look at hiring, then we've got to have a more open conversation and look at it instead of shutting it right down, because that was shut down right at the beginning of the last budget.
Carlene's right, but that also came
Yep.
down,
Yeah,
that also came down to communication that the previous city manager didn't do or show any of that until that night.
Yeah, so then now we
Right,
just
comes down to
barely did one of them. Yeah, so I mean, I think we have to have, more communication, because I was actually upset that happened last budget meeting.
And the budget process is gonna be different, I'm assuming,
Assuming-
for sure.
Yep.
Yes.
And I think each department head needs to speak, and we didn't
Right.
we didn't allow them last
We
time
will
to
tell the
speak
city
and present
manager,
their
this is how we
budget.
want it to be done. We'll get it done.
Okay.
Next topic.
Yep.
So,
Which is, I'm up, it's organizational leadership responsibilities. So I'm just chomping at the bit, because everything that we have been talking about is issues that we have, and that's what I want to try to resolve. I don't want to offend anybody. I'm going to talk to everybody as a group, as a whole, but there are some things that we're doing that is causing us a way not to progress, not to go forward. Talking to some other city managers, Roy City Council is going in the direction that Syracuse City Council went a couple years ago, and there was a lot of talks in the paper about they're not organized, they're dysfunctional, and if you listen now to our live streaming minutes, and we had it a couple weeks ago, had a pretty good debate, and all that is doing is just being negative towards what we're trying to do as a city. Talking with a pretty good city manager that's very successful, that's been a city manager for a long time, said a couple things, and we've talked about it right here, where city council member will instruct somebody, staff, to do something, and other council members don't know what's going on or what he's presented. He's just working with a couple different people. And really what needs to happen is we go back to it and say, okay, remember we talked about this. If you have an item that you want to bring on, talk about it during a council meeting and say, hey, I have an issue with this, I want to address it. Go to that policy or whatever the case may be. Maybe it's the city, maybe it's the the director's assistant, I want to bring it up because I don't know about it, then it goes to you guys, because you guys are the policymakers, right? You guys can change policy. So instead of inundating us with all this information and trying to research it, really what we're doing is we're just spinning our wheels and not getting day-to-day stuff done that needs to be done because we're working on one council member's request that 5 other council members or the mayor don't even know about. And that is a huge problem. And he says, once you get, call it freelancing in the fire service, once you get people freelancing, and I'm not saying we're all doing this. I'm just saying, Marge, you say, hey, Jason, I want you to do this. And then Carlene says, hey, Jason, I want you to do this. And Bob says, hey, Andy, hit this. And Brad says, Jason, get this. And nobody else knows what's going on, but I'm trying to dig research. I can't get anything done, the day-to-day stuff, because all I'm doing is working on one person. So to really be successful, if you have a policy question or a policy change, we have a discussion item on our council that a council member can say, hey, I want you to put this on, or the mayor say, hey, Jason, put this on the discussion item, and then we all talk about it, and then you guys are the deciding vote and say, no, we like it, we like the way it is, we're going to keep it. Or all of you guys are present, say, you know what, yeah, I don't like line G, let's change it to this, and everybody's in agreement, then we can give it to Andy and say, hey, fix line G to this, because the quorum, remember we've talked about the quorum says we want you to change it this way, not one individual person saying, look at this or change this, because then all we do is we're just spinning our wheels.
Let me just ask a comment.
Okay.
So you're proposing then that if we think there needs to be a policy adjustment, that we should share that in between us to see if we can get other ones to start thinking about that, and then make a proposal to put it on the agenda for discussion?
Yeah, 100%.
But are you seeing conversation taking place, and how does that conversation impact the open meetings law?
Well, you can have a conversation, but you can't deliberate. But one thing that we had discussed before is that, let's say you have an idea on a policy, Bob, and you, when we have the council discussion time in our meetings, you could say, you know what, you guys, I think this is something that I would like to see. Why don't you guys think about it, and we'll put it on 2 weeks from now at our next meeting as a discussion item. Then we have a discussion at that time, and that gives the council time to prepare for that topic. We come back 2 weeks, we have a discussion then in the council, there's a majority to say, hey, let's go that direction. So then we take the action at that point, and we prepare
Because I
something.
think it's
Then it isn't one council member saying, let's do this, or...
No, I agree with that.
Because Bob, you just said, when you do one of those, when you looked at the state law on that, you addressed that white paper that you put together to Andy, to Jay, to the mayor.
Correct.
You left the rest of the council members out.
No clue.
So we had no idea that you
Agreed.
were even looking at that policy
Agreed.
change. And so then we're kind of feeling like, well, we look stupid because, well, no,
Good point. I
because we
understand.
not looking at the policy change like you're reading the whole state law. And so then we don't get time to be able to address it or to even be able to think about it. That's our perspective when you do bring stuff up like this. So if you do restate law and there is something that says, hey, I don't like this policy or it doesn't match, then
We kick it out to you guys, you guys look at it, and then we have the
Hey.
discussion.
I like
yes.
that.
And-
But let's
And
make-
not just do them and not include us.
Oh, I absolutely agree.
Okay.
Here's the reason for that,
That
Colleen, it's a great
communication.
comment, because and this is a good time to argue it, or discuss it. When I first stepped on the job, it made very clear that under the Opens Meeting Law, there are certain restrictions by which we
Which-
can and cannot do as public.
That's true.
So here's why I've done it, and it worked initially, but it's not happening since. I would send the information to the city manager and the mayor, and the city manager would then, because they're in a neutral position, you send it out to all the council for review.
Okay.
And then you would look at it, and when we walked into a discussion item, because a single council member can put an agenda on the city council meeting. They have
Right.
that
Gotta have
ability.
two.
Right.
No, No, just
No,
one,
just
just
one.
to put an item on.
Yeah, you can put it
Oh,
on, I
okay.
can put it on, and the mayor can put it on.
Got ya.
But the issue then is that by you sending it out to them, you're in a neutral position, and you have the authority to send anything you want to the council. But that's not happening. And you bring a good point. If we're agreeable to help you administrator better, if we see something that may be important to the council, if you think it'll be okay, and this goes for all of us, that says, okay, send it to the council members, just to look at it, okay? Let them weigh in on it. I like that idea.
Yeah, because what I'm saying is, you just added extra work to Jason.
Well, yeah,
Do
but
you know what I mean? You're,
But, okay,
basically
so-
you
so why
go,
don't- yeah.
so-
Can I answer
Yeah,
this, and
yeah.
hopefully I'm okay? If that's the way you want to do it, I am totally fine to do it that way. I promise, I'm good with it. When I get something from you guys, I feel like I have to be the one to do all the research, look for it, and when I do that for all 6 of you, it's really dang hard to get anything done in the city. If that's the way you guys want to do it, if you guys kick me something, I'll just kick it out to you guys immediately and say, hey, and I won't even say who it's from. Council member wants to look at this, then it gives you guys time. I'll put it on the agenda as a discussion item, and then you guys can make the decision because you guys are the policymakers. Then it takes me and Andy
Out of it.
out of
There
it.
you go.
But if that's the way we want to do it, and again, guys, it always, always, always comes down to miscommunication. And if we can communicate that, then I feel way better about, because if I receive something, you guys know, I kick it out really pretty quick. So if you get it, and you want me to look at it, but you're not wanting me to fix it, you're not wanting Andy to fix it because you guys are the policymakers, then I'll even leave it away from Andy, and I'll just kick it out to you guys, because generally, like Andy said, our policies are really good, and I really believe they are. They need to be updated, and this company's gonna do it. That's a whole different subject. But if you want me to look at something to get to the council, man, get it to me, and I'll farm it out quick. I got no problem
Yeah,
doing
well,
that.
well, do you see what I'm
We need to
saying?
funnel
It made
Oh, I
us,
agree.
we didn't know what you were
One
discussing.
central point to funnel it through.
Yeah.
And I'm fine with that.
That's what.
I like it.
We
Yeah.
call the city manager, he's in the place, funnel it through him to the rest of the council members.
That's fine.
It doesn't have to be kept until council night, and well,
Agreed.
let's
I like it.
funnel it through. It's
Yeah.
good for discussion.
And I crack up at Bob, and I'm just gonna say, Bob, his white papers. Him and I had this discussion on his white papers, and it was a good one. And we both cracked up.
I don't read the whole thing, and I might not read the whole thing, but I will at least read the
Right.
gist of what you're saying.
But we both cracked up. But if I get a green paper from Bob, yeah, just whatever, a white paper, then I know I'm gonna farm it out to you guys, and we put it on the agenda, and then it makes it really smooth.
I like it.
So-
If you're okay with that, I think that'll help.
I'm totally fine with that, and I think that's the best way to do it. We have got to be united. We've got to be together.
We've got to be able to have a discussion. If we're blindsided by somebody bringing up something that we didn't have any idea about, then we can't hold a good discussion about it because we have no idea, and it
Right.
makes us look dumb.
Agreed.
So we need to be able to know in advance to be able to have a
Right,
conversation.
right.
Perfect.
That's the same on department heads.
I was
If
just gonna
there's
say that.
gonna
That
be
includes
something,
Yeah.
yeah, if there's something that's brought up that deals with the department head, then a department head should be able to know about it and should have that email.
100%
So that
agree.
they
100%
know
agree.
how to bring in the discussion and conversation.
And that takes me to my next part, is try not to surprise us at council meeting without at least letting us know ahead of time, hey, in my city council report, I'm gonna throw this out. Give us some warning, so it doesn't make us look bad, and then, because now that everybody's gonna be listening to this and viewing it, we want to be, and we want to look like we're as organized as we possibly can. We're all united. We're all on one team. You know, the legislative and the executive branch and all my operation people, we really are one team. And instead of clashing and pointing fingers and not being united, all that's doing is taking us further away from where we want to go. And where we want to go is we have a lot of good ideas. We want to get a lot of this stuff done. We got to work together. We got to be united. And if we don't, all we're gonna do is continue the downhill spiral and have other cities say, now Roy's the new Syracuse. And honestly, I don't want that. And we have good enough people and good enough employees and a dang good council staff to make that not be the case. So that's what I ask. I don't want to be Syracuse. We're Roy. You have a lot of employees that work for Roy because they like working for Roy. It's just taxing on us with all of your individual pushes that we can't do everybody's individual push. We can't do your individual agendas because we got 200 employees to run, we have 40,000 residents to serve, and we can't do it by digging in research and keeping the city manager and the attorneys buried in individual tasks. It doesn't work.
See, okay, that is exactly what we just took out of the thing that there cannot do via direction. City council cannot do.
And if you do, we'll just really politely say,
They
hey,
need to.
we'll just kick it out to the council, let them,
Please
because
discuss.
you guys are the deciding body. You guys, that's why you're elected
Take this
officials
to
by
the
the.
city council and have the city council. discuss
Right,
it.
right. Is everybody good with that?
We're good.
Okay, good.
It's all bullshit.
You go home,
You
sleep tonight.
get it on councilman.
The job description.
There's been correct.
What's that?
I said that would think to be better since team one was here.
That was tough.
From everybody, I think we could all take.
Okay, one quick change on your city manager job description. If we just name the mayor as the chief executive officer, right? On the city job description, it says that the city manager as chief executive officer assumes responsibility. So we need to probably put that to chief administrative
I agree.
officer.
I agree.
That's the change that I noticed right off the
Yeah.
bat.
Okay.
It's on my list here.
I had a couple other changes too.
Okay,
Done over.
Are we in that conversation?
yeah.
We've kind of had this conversation with the city attorney, and I just had some questions or doubts here. It says, the city manager in paragraph 1, that third line down, it says, confers with the city attorney to approve recommendations for executive and administrative actions.
Okay, where you at, Brad?
First paragraph under essential functions.
Oh, okay.
Third line down towards the end. Why does the city manager have to confer with the city attorney?
Yeah.
He's so busy now, why can't he just make a decision?
This is going to be an interesting
Because you gotta make sure things are legal, is that right?
Well,
I
I mean, he's always open to that, but I mean, if there's any question, he should go to the city attorney, but really, I mean, and looking at some of the others, they don't have that
Chief
in there.
administrator.
It just says approves recommendations, just says
So he's
approves
just right here.
recommendations for executive and administrative actions.
I
Makes
forgot my paper.
recommendations for legislative actions. I just had a question on that, why. And then if you skip down to paragraph 3, which we were talking about, Mason, the chief administrative officer, it kind of goes the same thing. In conjunction with the city attorney, monitors human resource management activities. Why do we have an HR person if we can't just go to the HR person? Then if there's a legal issue, go to the attorney. I just think we're using so much of Andy's and Brody's times on some trivial stuff that the city manager could be making their own decision on. That why do we have to keep conferring? You know, it's like a revolving door in his office. Let's just make a decision.
Okay,
That's why we're hiring a city manager.
agreed. Okay, attorney, let's ask the question, Andy. If the city manager makes the wrong decision, is there a legal, financial risk to the city through an arbitration?
Well, there is if we make a wrong decision, but I think what Brad is saying, we really don't need this in the job description.
Oh, you're saying it's in the policy, but you're saying it's not,
Well-
the city need to be here.
Yeah, it doesn't really need to be
Okay.
there. And that's, I'm okay if it's there, but it doesn't need to be there. It's,
So
It's
any
probably been
reference
in
to
there
an
for
attorney
years.
doesn't need to be in the policy.
yeah, I mean, we could really take that out of there.
Okay.
That's the only thing that I saw in there. I mean, if you look at other cities' job descriptions, a lot of this comes right from the state. It's almost verbatim in Layton, it's verbatim in Syracuse and Clearfield. All this stuff is right there. I don't know why
Well, to what Brad's saying is even your operation policies, everybody uses each other's operation policies. So, you know, our Roy City policy is very similar and close to Layton's and Bountiful's and Ogden's. They may do a couple little minor tweaks, and that's kind of what we're doing with ours. Yeah, we did this very same thing today, but they're all pretty close to the same. So. It's whatever you guys want to make it different than Bountiful. So if you want the job description for the city manager to have another line that says we like this, and we can do that.
Yeah.
So,
And there are some in ours that are, the others are more entailed, and ours is a little bit less, and some ours.
Just
is
because
a bit
they've
more,
tweaked
but
it or
they
added.
tweaked it.
Right.
Yep.
I think it stated
Yeah, it
pretty
just,
much the requirements of the city manager.
yep, and that part doesn't need to be there.
is that it on the conversation on this?
That's all
No.
I have, Bob.
Well, I only have, this is, I'm uncomfortable with this conversation. Okay? 2 reasons. 2 people in this room will probably consider applying for this job, okay? And normally, you don't have an open dialogue, okay, about changing the job position when 2 people in the room are going to apply for this position. That is typically never, ever happens. So I'm reluctant to get into the details of my recommendations because you just,
Well, it's just a job description, Bob. It's
not
not.
it, it's going to be the job. Here's the job, Dave. The issue basically says that we're going to announce this position when this is done, and announcing this position, everyone who wants to apply for the job will apply based on that job announcement.
Great.
Right.
And this council will approve this position description, probably, won't approve it tonight, but will basically make all the changes.
Right.
So the issue then becomes is, as you start to tweak this to make it work, does it create an unfair advantage, okay, for people who are going to apply for this position to be party to that whole
An unfair advantage that says what? You all have these job assignments and the thing that comes out? I don't see it as an unfair advantage
Okay,
anyway.
let's assume for a second, let me assume for a second I make this comment to you, Dave. I'm going to propose to you is that we don't have the,
And I'm going to propose to you that each one of these 4 people out here want to apply for the job.
Exactly.
It makes no difference.
but
It's
the
an
public,
open, it's an open public meeting. They have the right to see this. You
And-
can't not do it.
I'm not saying I can't do it, Dave. What I'm saying is that if I went up there and asked one of them, what's your opinion on this? And they gave me an opinion, and I applied their opinion to this job announcement, where they're basically could come back and apply for this job announcement, that's unethical.
But the thing is we're gonna approve it as a body.
Correct.
So we're not going to.
But are you going to approve it as a body with the recommendations of people who are going to apply for the position? Yes or no?
Sure, I have no problem with that. They may or may not apply. You don't know that they are. You're assuming things, and you can't assume things on them. Okay?
Well, in the application forms, I guarantee the ones going out from Roy City is very, very similar to the ones that will go out from Layton, from Ogden. Anyone that hires a city manager
Yeah.
will send out basically the same type of application.
I agree. Here was the reason, here was the reason for my comment. I agreed with the comment and made a comment to make change in the administrative officer. That keeps it consistent. I have a real big concern, Mayor, because this is what the current position description, which will be announced, says this. Under C, in terms of qualifications, let me be specific, Mayor, it says this. Minimum qualification requirements. A, has to have a master's degree. B, it says it has to have 5 years of progressive, responsible experience in municipality government. And C, it says an equivalent combination of education and experience. Mayor, I don't have a clue what that means. That is absolutely as vague as I've ever seen anything. What does that mean? Does it mean you can have more education and less experience? Does it mean you have more experience and less I don't have a clue what that means.
That's how I would take that,
What?
because I think it would be an interpretation, we're gonna take in consideration
Your
their
experience.
combination of what education they have and their ed.
But
and their
here's,
experience.
okay, so that means then, let's what you just said, Carleen. If a person applies that has a bachelor's degree and not a master's degree, can I then go ahead and consider that that bachelor's degree?
Because they have more experience. Yes.
That's exactly what I
Yes.
clarified in my comment.
Yes.
So if that's how it's going to be, then let's say that. I think that's a reasonable expectation. But to leave a group of people who could very well be responsible to define this, if you're a city council, it's ambiguous. And that ambiguous creates confusion.
I don't agree it's ambiguous, Bob. It's plain right there. It says with
Okay,
or
so
without.
let
So
me-
it's not ambiguous, it's hidden.
You either have.
Public comment on this?
No.
Sorry, Joe.
You either have your
Sorry, Joe.
job qualifications, or you have the job experience.
That's all it's saying. I mean, we as a council will decide.
You as a council make that
These are the people we want
determination.
here.
You want,
We will
Okay, so
decide
there's-
that.
or there.
Dave, I went
Yeah,
through, I
I
went
think we
through
need to
two of
just add
these.
a or.
Yeah.
Dave, I went through two of these, okay? And I will tell you, the candidate list that were
And then a
basically
or.
provided to me, the first screen was
Or,
that they
or.
didn't have a master's degree, they were not considered.
Oh, yeah, we did that one.
Okay,
I agree.
So
Did it
what
two
if
times.
it's, what if it's this? Okay, so what if, okay, so it says graduation, okay, master's degree,
Yeah.
and then it says and 5 years experience. What if we did master's degree or 5 years experience or
5 years experience is what?
or equivalent combination of
Responsible
education and experience?
And municipal.
Same
5
thing.
years experience in what?
Just change that and to or.
City administrative officer?
Hold on, let me read what it says again.
Why don't you just say must have been a fire chief for Roy City? Why?
I think if we just add the word
That's clear.
municipal
We just
management.
want to change that one.
So I think if we just add or in all those, we're
Said that
okay.
for Brad.
Yeah, so there's just one and you change that to an or.
And then do another or right before the next one.
Yeah.
I think we're making it harder than it needs to be. We just, yeah, but applicants come in, we review them as we always have. We decide what we
Because if we
want.
do or, then we're okay. Because then we're looking at education and
Send the
experience.
job announcement out,
Okay,
we bring it
okay,
back
I
every
agree.
week as a council, we review the applicants.
Yeah.
And Mayor, I will tell you, before I even basically, the last 15 I did, and I pulled the record, those were screened out. Screened out before they ever hit the council. They got down to 4. They didn't ask me my opinion of number A, B, C, and D. They basically were gone, and we got down to the top 4 based on the
No.
requirement.
Then I'll send it out.
Be careful.
As a city council, we decided, hey, we don't want, take out all attorneys, take out
The
this.
council
We
just
decided,
screened.
but we decided and we did that screening.
But
And then we got those.
remember the document that we got, and it said this person basically had the education, and this person basically had the experience, and this person had this. And we went through that and said, okay, gone, now scrubbed it down to 4, which we thought was the best quality, number 5, and had those interviews.
Yeah, well, we've already decided that we're going to do the process different this time.
Right.
So, but again, if you add the word or, then we're okay. Then we're looking at education and experience. We're taking in that.
This is the start of C, and this is the end of R.
Well, they really don't have direction yet because we haven't given them direction because the two of us say leave it as is. You two are saying or, March hasn't really said.
Yeah, I did. I said change
I'm
it to
okay
or.
with the or.
Okay, all right, there we go.
Or. Okay,
Or.
okay, we got or.
Okay.
Do you want this
Education
out?
Experience
and
the way-
Council
experience.
meeting?
For education.
We want it
Yeah.
on
When do you want me to give this out? For you guys to vote?
Yeah, because
Is that something you want to talk about now or you want that closed door session because personally? What do you want to do?
We could do it either way. If you guys, I mean, if we're just talking about when we're putting the job announcement, we're not talking about anybody's character or competency. So,
No.
is that what you're saying?
Let's have a closed door session.
Okay, what's the topic of the closed door
Just
session?
the city manager.
It's going to be-
We talking about an individual's competency or character?
Yes.
Okay, if we are, we can have a closed meeting.
Okay.
If you don't, you don't have to. If you're just talking about, hey, we want to announce this at a certain time or send it out, that's fine too. But we could, maybe it's dependent, so if you want to set it up with a closed meeting, we can do that. Yeah.
Yeah, because I was thinking
Okay.
we were gonna try to make a decision by the end of this month, so that we knew the 1st of November what we were doing.
Okay,
Yep.
so just put on the agenda.
Closed door.
Closed door next meeting?
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to have a closed door session to finish this? Okay.
Yep.
Okay, I think that's good. That's all I got, Mayor.
Okay. Anyone else have anything?
We can't speak,
They
so it's
can't
gonna be here.
Public comment.
Jason, you have
We
any
didn't
more?
open a public
Nope.
meeting.
Anna, you have any more?
No, no.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Hey.